Chapter 56-68. Cultivators from the upper realm accidentally came to the abandoned immortal forest. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate. Zhongli Xiaoran stood up and released his control over Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Zhongli Mu saw this and understood that Di Beiqian was telling the truth. He was even more confused. Grandfather, what is the upper realm? The upper realm is a lower realm than the immortal domain. When the cultivators there reach a certain level of cultivation, they will ascend to the immortal domain. In the past, many cultivators in the immortal domain came from the upper realm. However, there are fewer and fewer of them now. I didn't expect there to be other places besides the immortal domain. No wonder they are so weak. Zhongli Mu understood, and a smile appeared on his face again. As long as you are not from the immortal domain, it's fine. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others listened to Zhongli Xiaoran's words. Although it was only a few simple words, they revealed a lot of information. The connection between the upper realm and the immortal domain was indeed like this. However, he used the word ascend. Could it be that ascending to become an immortal meant that one would become a member of the immortal domain? If that was the case, wouldn't the people of the immortal domain be immortals? Everyone was shocked. This was something they had never thought of before. Senior, are the people of the immortal domain immortals? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. If it was before, she definitely wouldn't have dared to ask Zhongli Xiaoran. However, after Zhongli Xiaoran found out that they were from the upper realm, his attitude changed for the better. Only then did she muster up the courage to ask. What is an immortal? Zhongli Xiaoran chuckled. If someone can do something that mortals can't, then they are immortals. When one's cultivation reaches a certain level, they can do things that mortals can't do. Even if they are immortals, why can't they? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly startled. Zhongli Xiaoran's words made her suddenly understand many things that she couldn't understand before. Indeed, what they could do now was already inconceivable to the ordinary people of the lower realm, let alone the experts of the immortal domain. It was normal to be called an immortal. Xiran and the others were clearly shaken by these words. Even though it was just a simple exchange, it allowed them to understand Zhongli Xiaoran's strength and comprehension. Senior, you said that the cultivators from the upper realm will ascend? Why are there fewer cultivators in the upper realms of the immortal domain? Di Beiqian asked. After the cultivators from the upper realm ascend, they will go to the crossing immortal domain. Only when they reach the crossing immortal domain will they have the chance to truly ascend to the immortal domain. However, the current celestial realm was already different from before. The people there were arrogant and unruly and thought highly of themselves. They completely looked down on people from other places. Even people like us who live outside the immortal domain are treated as outsiders by them. What do you think the cultivators of the immortal domain are to them? Zhongli Xiaoran's gaze had an additional trace of ridicule. I came to the abandoned immortal forest because I couldn't stand the ugly faces of those people. Although this place isn't rich and life isn't convenient, it's good to be carefree and not have to face those hypocritical and pretentious fellows. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were immersed in what Zhongli Xiaoran said about the crossing immortal domain. Even though he didn't say it clearly, they understood the meaning behind his words. Chapter 56-69. The cultivators in the immortal domain must be in a difficult situation, perhaps even more difficult than the cultivators in the abandoned immortal forest. At this moment, they suddenly understood why they had not heard much about the immortal domain in the upper realm. If the cultivators in the upper realm were to encounter such a situation after ascending, the number of cultivators who could return to the upper realm would decrease. As time passed, the number of people who ascended would decrease. Is that why Senior said that we are lucky or unlucky to be here? Bailey Hongzhuang sighed and asked. Although there are many dangers in the abandoned immortal forest, the people here are not as powerful as the people in the immortal domain. As long as you are not from the immortal domain, they will not attack you, so don't worry. However, because you are in the abandoned immortal forest, you will not ascend to the immortal domain directly, which means you have lost your identity. Between the two, it is hard to say who is stronger and who is weaker. Time and fate. Luck is hard to predict. Perhaps it is your opportunity to be here. Zhongli Xiao Ran's attitude was a lot more peaceful than before, and the pressure of a strong person had long been withdrawn. At this moment, he looked like a kind grandfather next door, but obviously, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others would not really treat him as a kind grandfather. This grandpa's strength was too terrifying. Thank you, Senior, for not killing us. Di Beichun cupped his hands. He could sense that Zhongli Xiaoran no longer had the killing intent from before. In other words, their lives were saved. Zhongli Xiaoran looked at Di Beichun, and a smile appeared on his lips. Well, it's fate that brought us together. This old man no longer cares about these things. With that, Zhongli Xiaoran walked out of the wooden house and sat at the door to boil a pot of tea and leisurely basked in the sun. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This feeling was no different from taking a trip to the gates of hell. Fortunately, they were lucky and did not lose their lives here. At this moment, Zhong Limu also knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had only befriended him for no other purpose. He was a little embarrassed in his heart. He scratched the back of his head, looking a little embarrassed. I seem to have been too arbitrary before. I'm really sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. From Zhong Limu's point of view, this was understandable. Zhong Limu, you don't have to apologize. Actually, we did hide something from you. Di Beichun slowly said. Even though they weren't from the immortal domain, they weren't from the abandoned immortal forest either. So, you don't want to be friends with me anymore? Zhong Limu was a little dejected. I didn't want to target you guys, but when I thought about how you guys are from the immortal domain and how you guys lied to me, I couldn't control my emotions. Grandpa said that the people of the immortal domain are very cunning. After they capture us, they will bully us. That's how my friends lost their lives. Zhong Limu, we can understand you. Actually, we are also very sorry. Bailey Hongzhuang said apologetically. If you don't mind, how about we continue to be friends? If they guessed correctly, this Zhong Limu was younger than them, adding on the fact that he had always lived here and rarely interacted with outsiders. His personality was also very straightforward. Actually, if they really made friends with someone like this, there was no need to worry. He was someone who was truly trustworthy. Chapter 5670. Everyone smiled and nodded. Of course we're willing. Outside the house, the old man who was drinking tea slowly smiled, then squinted his eyes and lazily basked in the sun. After their identities were exposed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. At least they didn't have to worry about their identities being exposed. At the same time, they also understood that Zhongli Xiao Ran saw that they weren't telling the truth, but it was obvious that Zhongli Xiao Ran didn't care. Zhong Limu, these are the things that you asked us to bring. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the clothes to Zhong Limu. Other than that, I thought that you guys would definitely lack some daily necessities, so I prepared some based on the situation. I hope that they'll be useful to you. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the things from the storage ring and handed them to Zhong Limu. Zhong Limu looked at the many things in front of him and felt even more embarrassed. Previously, when he checked the storage ring, he had already discovered these things. Now that he knew that everything was prepared for him, he couldn't help but feel touched. Thank you so much. These things are really useful to us. Zhong Limu smiled. You guys don't know, because the abandoned immortal forest is very far from the city, it's very difficult to exchange for things normally. These things are what we lack the most. If other people know that we have these things, they'll definitely be envious. With that, Zhong Limu turned to the outside of the house and shouted, Grandpa, we have seasoning now. Then I'll leave today's meal to you. Zhong Li Xiao Ran lazily said. Zhong Limu smiled and nodded. No problem. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other. Grandfather, this is really our grandfather. Why don't you guys rest for a while? I'll go hunt some wild animals as an apology. Zhong Limu smiled. No need. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Why don't we go with you? That's good too. Following behind Zhong Limu, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest also witnessed his true strength. Previously, when they were dealing with the demonic beasts in the forest world, it was very exhausting. They had to use all of their skills to deal with the stronger demonic beasts. However, These demonic beasts were like chickens and ducks in front of Zhongli Mu. They were easily killed. The disparity was so great that it made everyone sigh. Zhongli Mu noticed everyone's expression and couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, my strength is nothing compared to grandfather's. You don't have to worry. As long as you work hard, your cultivation will increase very quickly. Zhongli Mu, let's train together with you in the future. The cultivation resources of our lower realms are not comparable to the immortal realms. Moreover, your strength is so strong. I believe our cultivation speed will be faster. No problem. Grandpa has already agreed. Zhongli Mu laughed heartily. I've been cultivating by myself all this time, and I've been bored to death. You guys can keep me company. I can't teach you how to cultivate, but I can tell you my previous cultivation method. Maybe it will be helpful to you. Thank you very much. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's eyes lit up. Zhongli Xiao Ran looked like an expert, which was why Zhongli Mu had such strength at such a young age. Since Zhongli Mu taught them this method, they naturally benefited a lot. Chapter 56-71. Zhongli Mu, let us prepare today's meal. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other. Clearly, they were very good at this kind of thing. Although they had only met once today, they would have to trouble Zhongli Mu and Zhongli Xiao Ran in the future. Naturally, they had to perform well. According to their guesses, Zhongli Xiao Ran was an expert. There were too many things they didn't know about the immortal realm. They might have to trouble him in the future. Hearing this, Zhongli Mu was slightly stunned. He waved his hand and said, "No need. You are the guests. How can I let you prepare? No need to be polite. These are all small things. We are very good at it." Xiren nodded. Women are the best at this kind of delicate work. As he spoke, when Xiren pulled Zhongli Mu to the side and gave Shangwan Yingying a look, whether or not they could please Zhongli Xiao Ran would depend on their skills. Ling stood at the side with her arms crossed. This kind of thing, she obviously wasn't good at it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling who was standing on the side. She couldn't help but shake her head and smile. Ling, you should also rest and wait for us. Linger nodded when she heard this. She felt that she was in the way, so she walked to the other side. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying didn't usually cook, but their skills were still there. Very quickly, the demonic beast meat was turned into a dish. A rich aroma slowly spread out and reached the tip of everyone's nose. Everyone was immediately attracted. It smells so good. Zhongli Mu's eyes lit up. His young face was filled with joy and anticipation. This is much better than what I usually cook. Hongzhuang and Yingying are very good at cooking. You will know when you try it later. I'm already looking forward to it. Zhongli Mu was very happy. Grandpa always thinks that my cooking is not good enough. Then how is your grandpa's cooking? Xiren asked curiously. Zhongli Mu thought for a moment and said, Ever since I learned how to cook, my grandpa never cooked again. I have forgotten how good he is, but I don't think he is better than me. Seeing this, Di Beichin and the others immediately thought of Zhongli Mu, who started cooking at a young age, and Zhongli Xiao Ran, who was peacefully sunbathing outside. I suddenly feel that my old man is very good to me. Xiren said. Di Beichin nodded. My master too. My ma's sister too. Bali Yin said. As the dishes were prepared, Bailey Hongzhuang called out to the door, Senior Zhongli, it's time for lunch. Creak. A sound came from the chair at the door. Apparently, it had been used for a long time and had fallen into disrepair. Just as Zhongli Xiao Ran was about to enter, several voices suddenly came from outside the door. Old Zhong, what did your family do this afternoon? Why is it so fragrant? Zhongli Xiao Ran looked at the few familiar old men outside and rolled his eyes with a look of disdain. Your noses are really good. You can smell it so quickly. An old man of similar age walked to Zhongli Xiao Ran's side and sat down. In any case, we have been neighbors for many years. You actually didn't invite us to taste the delicious food you made. Zhongli, old man, you are really stingy. Chapter 56-72. I knew that old man Zhongli wouldn't be so stingy. He knew that we would definitely come, so he didn't bother to call us. The gray-robed elder was full of smiles, as if he had already seen through Zhongli Xiao Ran and completely ignored his own familiarity. Old man, I think that your words are quite reasonable. The only old woman smiled and nodded. I can tell that Moor didn't make today's food just by smelling it. I'm so hungry. Let me have a taste. Old woman Hua, you're too anxious. Hua Xiu Kong shook his head, his expression filled with disdain. Hearing that, old woman Hua sneered. When I went out just now, I saw someone run out without even closing the door. I wonder who it is. Cough, cough. Inside the house, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest heard the sound coming from outside the house. They couldn't help but look at each other, their faces filled with worry. Although Senior Zhong Li had already accepted their existence, it didn't mean that the others in the abandoned immortal forest were willing to accept them as well. If they weren't willing, then wouldn't it be very dangerous for them to stay here? It was just that they were blind and couldn't run away even if they wanted to. This feeling of resignation was really helpless to the extreme. Most importantly, they would rather die than let these people discover the secret of the Chaos Ring. Otherwise, once these people went to the upper realm, they would turn the world upside down. At the very least, most of the cultivators in the upper realm wouldn't be their match. It would definitely cause a catastrophe. At that moment, everyone couldn't help but clench their fists. Bailey Hongzhuang's palms were sweaty. She couldn't help but worry in her heart, but her expression was unusually calm as she looked outside the house. They had no other choice but to wait. Zhong Limu seemed to have felt Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's nervousness. He immediately said, Old woman Hua and the rest are very good. You don't have to worry. I hope so. Xiren's expression was somewhat stiff. To Zhong Limu, these were all amiable grandparents. However, to them, these were all terrifyingly strong cultivators. Just as everyone was feeling nervous, Zhongli Xiao ran and the three old men walked in together. When Granny Hua saw Bailey Hongzhuang, she immediately took a step forward. Her eyes were filled with amazement. What a beautiful girl. In the blink of an eye, old lady Hua had already circled around Bailey Hongzhuang, sizing her up thoroughly. Bailey Hongzhuang's body was a little stiff. Under the other party's gaze, the feeling of being unable to hide came again. As expected, this old lady Hua's strength was not any weaker than Zhong Li Xiao ran. Old lady Hua then looked at Ling Er and Shang Waning. There are quite a few pretty girls here. It's rare to see such pretty young people in the abandoned immortal forest. Old lady Hua, these young men are also very handsome. Old man you used to talk about how handsome you were when you were young. In my opinion, you can't compare to these youngsters. Nonsense. Yu Hong's expression turned serious. His gaze swept across Di Beichen and the other two and said, These two young men have the same demeanor as me when I was young. Chapter 5673. Haha. Old you've been exposed, haven't you? Old lady Hua guffawed. Yu Hong paused, his gaze landing on Xiren. Old Hua, tell me the truth. Was I better looking than this kid back then? Xiren stared blankly at Yu Hong, who was standing beside him with a serious expression on his face. His heart was about to break down. So was he being despised? Although he knew that his looks couldn't compare to Beichen and Yin Che, he was still considered handsome and dashing among men. Wasn't he? Why are you looking at me with such disdain? Most importantly, looking at the old man with a face full of wrinkles beside him, his heart was filled with unspeakable bitterness, but he couldn't say anything. Who asked the old man to be so strong? Shang Waning couldn't help but laugh out loud. She almost laughed out loud, but immediately held it in. Xiren looked again and realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all twitching their lips. They were clearly trying hard to hold back their laughter. However, judging from the way their lips were twitching, they probably couldn't hold it in any longer. Xiren was speechless. He only hated that A.O. Ling Xiao hadn't returned from the A.O. family. He couldn't bear all of this alone. Old you're already so old, but you're still not convinced. Look at the young man beside you. He can't even be bothered to compare himself with you. Old lady Hua rolled her eyes. Yu Hong turned his head to look at Xiren and asked, Am I wrong? Xiren shook his head bitterly. No, you're right. Yu Hong patted Xiren's shoulder in satisfaction. You're a promising child. I have high hopes for you. Thank you, senior. Old lady Hua didn't pay any more attention to Yu Hong. Her attention was already on the delicious dishes on the table. Io, this old lady really has an appetite after seeing this dish. Let me have a taste. Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly handed over a pair of chopsticks. Old Lady Hua glanced at her, her eyes filled with satisfaction. After tasting it, Old Lady Hua's eyes lit up. She said, "This taste is really good. I haven't eaten such delicious food in a long time." Yu Hong and Hua Shukong couldn't help but start tasting the food when they saw that Old Lady Hua had already started eating. Once he tasted it, his expression immediately became the same as Old Lady Hua's. He began to eat heartily without any hesitation. Zhongli Shao Ran looked at the three fellows in front of him who were acting familiar with him and said helplessly, "Don't you have any awareness as guests?" "Oh." He was answered by the sound of chewing. "Can you guys listen to me first?" Oh, what answered him was still the sound of chewing, but this time there was a shake of the head. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others saw this scene, they immediately felt that these seniors in front of them were very interesting. Obviously, they were not just familiar with each other, which was why they were so unscrupulous. When Zhongli Shao Ran saw that these fellows were not polite at all, he did not say anything else and directly picked up the bowl and chopsticks. If he didn't start eating, he was afraid that there would only be empty plates left. "Don't just watch. Let's eat together." Halfway through the meal, Zhongli Shao Ran remembered Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and immediately said. Di Beichen looked at the plate with only 2 vegetables left. He shook his head and said, "Senior, we're not hungry. You guys can eat." Chapter 5674. As he spoke, Yu Hong reached for the remaining 2 stalks of vegetables. The flour blocked his chopsticks. "You're going to get fat if you continue eating. Stop eating. Look at what you're saying. This old man consumes a lot of energy. How can I get fat? You, on the other hand, as a woman, you're going to get fat. You two care so much about each other. You can't get fat. As the saying goes, if I don't go to hell, who will? Let me take care of it." Hua Shukong laughed out loud and added more chopsticks. Clap, clap. The sound of chopsticks colliding could be heard. It was just a collision between chopsticks, but Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest could feel the terrifying force of the collision. Logically speaking, chopsticks shouldn't be able to withstand such force, but they did. It wasn't because the chopsticks were abnormally strong, but because the other party controlled his strength very well. That was why they could withstand all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 6 was secretly frightened. Don't look at the scene of this senior who looked like an ordinary person, but his strength was really terrifying. However, just as the 3 of them were fighting with their chopsticks, Zhongli Shao Ran picked up the plate and put the remaining 2 vegetables into his bowl. Then he put it into his mouth at lightning speed. Gooji gooji. The chewing sound stunned the 3 of them, and their faces darkened. Facing Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's stunned expressions, Zhongli Mu smiled and shrugged. "Grandpa and the rest are usually like this. You'll get used to it when you see more of them. Haha. Old people don't have many hobbies. They're just more interested in eating." Hua Shukong chuckled. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest nodded slightly. Although the scene in front of them was simple, none of them dared to look down on it. What good culinary skills? Who made the dishes today? Granny Hua put down her bowl and chopsticks and smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. "Granny Hua, today's meal was made by Hongzhuang and Ying. Zhongli Mu replied with a smile. Old Lady Hua's gaze also landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Ying. She nodded her head in satisfaction. "Excellent craftsmanship indeed. No wonder you're so clever with your hands. You must come here often in the future." "Not bad. Cook more," Yu Hong said with a smile. "As long as Senior likes it, I will make it often." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Zhongli Shao Ran glanced at Hua, and the other 2 and said casually, "Aren't you going to ask about their identities?" As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were all nervous. They had finally asked the most important question. However, the situation did not happen as they had feared. Hua waved her hand and said indifferently, "Since they can even pass you, what else do we have to worry about? You're protecting your grandson. If his background was unknown, you would have dealt with him long ago. Why would you wait until now?" Yu Hong rolled his eyes. "Don't try to frame me with such things." Zhongli Shao Ran glanced at the 3 and said, Since you don't want to ask any more questions, why are you still here after the meal? Don't tell me you feel embarrassed and want to help me wash the dishes? Old man Zhongli, what are you saying? If we really help you wash the dishes, wouldn't we be treating you like outsiders? The three of them immediately stood up, as if it was a matter of course, without the slightest bit of embarrassment. Chapter 5675. Although Zhongli Xiaoran had said so, it was obvious that Yu Hong and the other two did not take his words to heart. Let's go first. This old man is still the same as before. He doesn't even know how to give us some face in front of the younger generation. Shukong shook his head and sighed as he took a few steps towards the door. All right, let's go. Hua nodded and turned her gaze towards the kitchen. Speaking of which, you have quite a lot of good stuff here. Why don't you share some with me? Hua took a few steps back, and her gaze landed on the seasonings on the table. She did not look away. In the abandoned immortal forest, they did not have to worry about food. However, there were simply too few seasonings. Although some of the herbs had some flavor, it was still lacking. Normally, it would be difficult to get seasonings. Furthermore, they were not willing to move their feet to the town outside the abandoned immortal forest. Hence, it was extremely rare for them to get seasonings. That's right. Why don't you share some with us too? Yu Hong smiled. I'll treat you guys to some food next time. Put it down. Zhongli Xiaoran's firm voice rang out. In your dreams. These are all mine. Don't even think about taking a single jar away. Tis TSK. Old Lady Hua shook her head ruefully. However, she still put down the jar of seasonings in her hand. I knew that you would still be so stingy. I treated you to lunch, and you still have the nerve to talk about me like that. Zhongli Xiaoran frowned and turned his gaze towards Zhongli Mu. Mu-er, now you know why I told you not to be a good person? You can't say that. Shukong smiled. Don't we still treat you as one of us? Hua ignored Zhongli Xiaoran and looked towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Little girl, did you bring these? Bailey Hongzhuang heard and looked towards Zhongli Xiaoran. They still had to rely on him. Hua noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze and said, Why are you looking at this old man? Needless to say, I know that it's impossible for him to have these. If it's not you, who else could it be? Bailey Hongzhuang maintained a smile on her face. Although these seniors were quarreling and seemed to be very close, as an outsider, she really couldn't speak rashly. If she offended anyone, the consequences wouldn't be a joke. How about this? I can see that your cultivation is only at the nebula realm. You still need to improve your strength. The flower looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a loving smile on her face. As long as you cook for me every day, I'll teach you some skills. How about it? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes suddenly lit up. Although she did not know the true strength of this granny, she could tell that she was a terrifying existence from the fight between the chopsticks. If such an expert was willing to give him pointers, he would definitely be able to improve by quite a bit. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang, but Di Beichen and the others' eyes also lit up when they heard this. This was really good news. However, Bailey Hongzhuang still didn't agree immediately. Her gaze was still on Zhongli Xiaoran. Zhongli Xiaoran said, Old woman Hua, you are really getting better at doing business. It wasn't easy for me to find a girl who can cook, and you want to kidnap her with just a few words? Chapter 5676. Zhongli Xiaoran did not miss the anticipation in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. He paused and said, You do need to improve your strength. Otherwise, it will be hard for you to survive in the abandoned immortal forest. Old Lady Hua is quite capable. It will be good for you to learn some skills from her. Bailey Hongzhuang was overjoyed when she heard Zhongli Xiaoran's words. She quickly cupped her hands and said, Thank you, Senior Zhongli. Thank you, Senior Hua. You're welcome. Hua waved her hand. It's a deal between us. You help me cook, and I guide you in your cultivation. It's very fair. There's no need to thank me. Cooking is just a small matter. Thank you for your guidance. Hua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's humble and courteous manner. The satisfaction in her eyes deepened. You're indeed the girl that I fell in love with at first sight. The more I look at you, the more I like you. Old Lady Hua, what are we going to do now that you've snatched away the girl who can cook? Yu Hong frowned as if he was upset that he was one step too late and missed such a good opportunity. When Ziren suddenly had an idea, "Senior Yu, why don't you give me some guidance too?" Yu Hong turned to look at Ziren with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "I didn't know that you could cook." Ahem. Ziren coughed awkwardly and placed his hands on Shangwan Yingying's shoulders. "Senior, I don't know how to cook, but my wife does." Shangwan Yingying glanced at Ziren. When she heard Ziren's first sentence, she already knew what he was up to. "I see." Yu Hong nodded in satisfaction. "That's not bad. I'll consider it." When Ziren chuckled, it was not easy to get guidance from such a strong person. If it was any other day, he might not succeed, even if he sharpened his brain. Now, all he had to do was help cook. Even if he had to learn how to cook, it would be worth it. Huashukan's eyes fell on Di Beichun, Bai Li Yanxie, and Linger. "Do any of you know how to cook?" The three of them looked at each other and shook their heads. They had never thought that cooking was so important. Seeing this, Huashukan looked helpless. "Old man Hua, it looks like you have no chance." Yu Hong looked smug. "Grandpa Hua, Hong Zhuang is Beichun's wife." Zhongli Mu pointed at Bailey Hong Zhuang. Huashukan looked back and forth between Bailey Hong Zhuang and Deep Beichun, and finally his eyes fell on Hua Hua. "Old lady Hua, since the two of them are a couple, why don't we make do with each other during the meal?" As soon as he said this, Bailey Hong Zhuang and Deep Beichun looked at Hua Hua with hope. What happened today was really a pleasant surprise for them. They didn't expect to gain so much after revealing everything. Obviously, as long as Hua Hua agreed, Huashukan was willing to teach Di Beichun. Whether it was in terms of attribute power or martial techniques, they needed to improve. Even if it was just simple guidance, they would benefit greatly. Hua Hua looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang and nodded with a smile. "All right then. Grandpa, Grandma Hua, and the rest have already arranged everything. What should we do?" Chapter 5677. Zhongli Shaoran looked at Zhongli Mu's anxious look and turned his gaze to the flower. "Old lady Hua, didn't you close the mountain? Why are you taking in disciples?" The flower raised her eyebrows. This kind of standard naturally varies from person to person. "Have you seen such a beautiful girl before?" Zhongli Shaoran looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang and fell into silence. "Master, I realize that there are many benefits to being beautiful." Xiao Hei's face was full of joy. Her master was already as beautiful as a fairy, but she didn't expect to have such an unexpected reward today. Bailey Hong Zhuang also didn't expect this, but she could feel that Granny Hua was looking at her with a kind gaze. Thinking about it, Granny Hua must have been a beauty when she was young. Zhongli Mu saw that his own grandfather was defeated and felt even more helpless. It seemed that there was no hope of snatching Hong Zhuang and the rest back. Thinking about today's meal and what he usually ate, his gaze dimmed. This was really despairing. "Little girl, tell Granny, what is your name?" "Senior." "Junior is Bailey Hong Zhuang." "No need to be so polite. Just call me Granny Hua from now on." "Yes, Granny Hua. Come, Granny will bring you to my house to familiarize yourself." With that, the flower brought Bailey Hong Zhuang outside. Di Beichun and the rest also walked out. Yu Hong and Huashukan also brought Wen Ziren and Xiao Hei out. In a moment, the unusually lively house suddenly quietened down. Zhongli Mu's face was dejected. "We won't be able to eat such delicious food in the future." Zhongli Shaoran patted Zhongli Mu's head and said, "Silly child, we can go and freeload." "Freeload?" Zhongli Mu was stunned and looked at Zhongli Shaoran suspiciously. "Grandfather, didn't you say not to be too familiar with people?" When Granny Hua and the rest came, he clearly heard his grandfather say that. Cough, cough. Zhongli Shaoran coughed lightly and earnestly said, "Muir, we are not too familiar with people. We are already very familiar with each other." "Grandpa, is that really the case?" Zhongli Mu was a little doubtful. He didn't know why, but he felt that something was wrong. Zhongli Shao nodded. "Of course, think about it. Aren't you very familiar with Granny Hua and the others?" Zhongli Mu thought for a moment. "That does seem to be the case." "That's right." Zhongli Shao heaved a sigh of relief. It was getting harder and harder to deceive children as they grew up. After going to Granny Hua's residence, Bailey Hong Zhuang discovered that this place was actually very close to Zhongli Mu's residence. It was only because of the trees that they did not notice before. Now that they knew the location, they realized that it was very close. The residences in the abandoned immortal forest were all simple wooden houses. Even though they looked very crude, they had a different kind of elegance. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others began to divide the work. The men were responsible for hunting, while the women were responsible for cooking. If it was on a normal day, this kind of life obviously did not belong to them. However, it was this simple life that made them very happy. Linger, do you want to learn too? Shang Guanying looked at Ling, who was still standing at the side, and asked with a smile. Ling frowned and shook her head. I'm not good at such delicate work. Chapter 5678. Ling, if you're interested, you can learn from them. These seniors are all very powerful. Being able to get their pointers is something that many cultivators yearn for. You've been stuck in a nebula realm for a while now. Breaking through is so difficult. Maybe they'll be your light. Bailey Hongzhuang was deep in thought. Although she didn't know what realm it was after breaking through the nebula realm, Ling Er's cultivation talent was so outstanding. Logically speaking, she should have broken through long ago. However, there hadn't been any movement recently. It was a bit strange. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Linger also fell silent. Shang Guanying's face was full of joy. That's right. Now is a good time to curry favor with the seniors. You can learn to cook, and once you do, you can even help Yin Che. Help Yin Che? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Shang Guanying nodded. Isn't that right? Naturally. Isn't it because he's relying on me to get guidance? Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling both understood. However, Ying, does this count as you being sold by Xiren and helping him count the money? I'm not helping that guy. Ling turned her gaze. She was unhappy at the mention of Bai Li Yin Che. If you're not helping him, just treat it as helping yourself. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Whether it was Ling or Yin Che, they were both arrogant. She couldn't do anything about it. In the beginning, Granny Hua and the others didn't give much guidance. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very happy cooking. In their opinion, this should be the seniors' test for them. Hua, and the others were like otherworldly experts in their eyes. Naturally, they couldn't teach them everything easily. However, as long as they got familiar with them, there was always hope. Of course, during this process, Zhongli Xiaoran didn't hesitate to bring Zhongli Mu to freeload. Old man Zhongli, didn't you say that people shouldn't be so friendly? You're actually here to freeload today? Granny Hua crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked at Zhongli Xiaoran with burning eyes. It was as if she was waiting to watch a good show. Cough, cough. Zhongli Xiaoran coughed. Zhongli Mu immediately understood and said with a smile, Granny, when not making friends, we're already very close. Hearing this, Hua couldn't help but laugh. She patted Zhongli Mu's head and said, Mu you're right. Saying that, the flower quietly looked at Zhongli Xiaoran. Old man, you're even using Mu now. Mu is my grandson. Zhongli Xiaoran had a calm expression as he didn't feel that there was any problem. It was another fine day. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had already stayed in the abandoned immortal forest for a few days. In these few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and Granny Hua had become much more familiar with each other. She loved and respected her mother-in-law from the bottom of her heart. Granny Hua was very cute. She didn't care about trifles, and her words revealed an indescribable carefreeness. Granny Hua, Ling, has been stuck at Star Cloud Level 9 for a while now. Why hasn't she broken through yet? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Ling also looked at Hua. She was also very confused about this point. Hua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and then looked at Ling, who was looking forward to it. She lazily laid on the rocking chair and closed her eyes. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling looked at each other and were about to leave helplessly. However, they suddenly heard Granny Hua's voice. Chapter 5679. After the Nebula Level 9 is the Radiant Moon Realm. The Radiant Moon Realm is divided into 3 realms: the Radiant Moon Realm, the Radiant Moon Realm, and the Heavenly Moon Realm. Each realm is also divided into 9 levels. It's extremely difficult to break through from the Nebula Realm to the Radiant Moon Realm. This is a natural process, so remember not to rush things. Quantitative changes will lead to qualitative changes. The more stable your foundation is before breaking through to the radiant moon realm, the stronger your abilities will be after the breakthrough. As far as I know, some powerhouses have deliberately suppressed the speed of breaking through to the radiant moon realm. When they break through naturally, they're undoubtedly the strongest among their peers. Bailey Hongzhuang listened attentively to Granny Hua's words. Previously, she did not know much about the realms above the nebula realm. Although it was just a simple introduction, it gave her a clear outline in her mind. As for suppressing the speed of breaking through, she had heard of such situations before. However, after listening to Granny Hua's explanation, she was even more clear about the effects of success. No wonder there's such a huge difference in abilities between cultivators of the same level. The foundation is the most important. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. She had always known that for cultivators, the foundation was the foundation. Only with a stable foundation could one have more achievements. However, Granny Hua told her that before breaking through to the radiant moon realm, she must try her best to suppress her cultivation. Presumably, the longer she suppressed her cultivation, the more her abilities would increase after breaking through. That's right. Granny Hua nodded. The higher the level of cultivation, the more important the foundation will be. Girl, you have to pay attention to this too. Thank you for your advice, Granny. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her hands, looking as if she had learned something. As she spoke, Granny Hua's gaze turned to Ling. However, your situation is different from what I've described. Ling was slightly stunned. Granny Hua continued. The reason why you can't break through to the radiant moon realm is because you were once sealed by an extremely powerful force. If you can't break this seal a little, it'll be very difficult for you to break through. As soon as she said that, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling were shocked. They thought about Yunjiao. Because of some things that had happened back then, he had indeed been sealed. Not only had his strength been sealed, but his memories had also been sealed. In Bai Yunjiao's ruins, Ling Er's seal had been unlocked a little, and she had recovered part of her memories. However, they also understood that she had not fully recovered. They did not think that the increase in her strength was related to the seal. However, the two of them did not expect Granny Hua's eyesight to be so high. They didn't say anything, but Granny Hua could tell that Ling had been sealed before. Her eyesight was really amazing. As a member of the Dragon Clan, you became the contracted beast of a cultivator weaker than you. I believe many stories must have happened to you. As for the specifics, I won't ask. The flower's expression was calm, as if what it said was nothing out of the ordinary. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed in her heart again. From the beginning to the end, Granny Hua and the other seniors had never mentioned anything about Ling Er's identity. She only thought that Ling had hidden herself very well after transforming into her human form, and it would not be easy to see through her true form. Now, it seemed that the seniors had already seen through Ling Er's hidden identity, but they were too lazy to expose it. Chapter 5680. If you want to break through, it's not impossible. The most important thing is still your own cultivation. Just as I said before, a quantitative change will lead to a qualitative change. When your cultivation is enough to break through to the radiant moon realm, the seal will weaken along with your strength. Perhaps, other than breaking through, you'll gain something else. Granny Hua closed her eyes again as she spoke. I'm going to take an afternoon nap. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Ling bowed and left the room. A quantitative change will lead to a qualitative change. Ling mumbled to herself, her eyes filled with thoughts. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Ling who was deep in thought, and could not help but say, I wonder what happened back then that even your memories had to be sealed. Even Master did not release your seal completely the last time. They were all very confused about this, and could not understand why Bai Yunjiao would do this. I believe that the previous master must have her reasons for doing this. It's just that we can't know about it for now. Ling Er's expression gradually became determined. Since a quantitative change will lead to a qualitative change, as long as I continue to cultivate and increase my origin power, I'll naturally be able to break through the seal. I'll then know what happened back then. Until now, The feeling of having incomplete memories still troubled her greatly. She always felt as if she had lost some very important memories. Most importantly, they were now in the abandoned immortal forest. Although she did not have any memories, she was sure that she had been to this place before. If she could remember everything, she would not be so unfamiliar with the immortal realm. She would also be able to help Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It would not be like now, where even breaking through to the Radiant Moon realm was so difficult. Bailey Hongzhuang also understood Ling Er's helplessness and frustration. Her beautiful face lit up with a bright and warm smile, instantly shining into Ling Er's heart, dispelling the darkness and warming it up. Ling Er, we'll find out about everything sooner or later. Don't be anxious. After all, your cultivation is the highest now. Just treat it as waiting for us. Hearing this, Ling Er nodded. That's the only way now. After Bailey Hongzhuang left the house, she found Di Beichun and the others. They were all cultivating together with Zhongli Mu. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang appear, everyone's face was filled with joy. Hongzhuang, Granny Hua is already taking an afternoon nap? Di Beichun asked aloud. It had been like this for the past few days, and they already knew that Grandma Hua had the habit of taking a lunch break. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Yes, but Grandma Hua told me something before she went to sleep. She immediately repeated what Granny Hua had said earlier. So when we are at Nebula Stage 9, there is no need to rush to break through. Suppressing it a bit more should be beneficial to us in the future. That's right. Back then, before I broke through to the Radiant Moon realm, I also stopped for a long time. This was what Grandfather told me, so I'd been suppressing it. However, one day when I was sleeping, I quietly broke through on my own. Zhongli Mu shrugged. After breaking through, I felt that my cultivation was much stronger than before. It didn't feel like it was just a breakthrough. Chapter 56-81. After cultivating with Zhongli Mu, everyone understood how powerful Zhongli Mu was. Senior Zhongli would often guide Zhongli Mu in his cultivation, and he was not stingy in the process. He would occasionally give them a few pointers, which were of great help to them. After staying in the abandoned immortal forest for a few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest returned to the upper realm. I wonder if Yinju has returned? Xiren's expression was filled with longing. The abandoned immortal forest is such a good opportunity for him to improve. It would be a pity if he missed it. That's right. With Yinju's comprehension, he will definitely improve greatly. Di Beichun nodded. Hongzhuang and I have already sent people to the mercenary guild to inform him. Logically speaking, he should have heard the news and should be back soon. It would be great if he's back. I think we can stay in the abandoned immortal forest for a while. Speaking of the abandoned immortal forest, Xiren was very happy. Although they often had to hunt and cook there and did not have as much time to cultivate as usual, their cultivation progress was much faster than before. This was all thanks to Senior's guidance. In addition, the abandoned immortal forest was rich in vitality, which made it very suitable for cultivation. Therefore, everyone's progress was very good. Later, we will tell Father and Mother that we will be in closed-door cultivation for a while. This way, no one will be suspicious. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichun. If they were not going to come out for a long time, it would be better to inform them in advance. No problem, Di Beichun replied with a smile. As a cultivator, it was normal for them to go into closed-door cultivation. Even his father often went into closed-door cultivation. Therefore, it would not arouse any suspicion. However, he was also thinking about whether he should tell his father about the abandoned immortal forest. I have to find a chance to ask Father if he knows about the existence of the crossing immortal domain. Hearing Di Beichun's words, everyone nodded. With the Di family status in the upper realm, it was not impossible for them to come into contact with the crossing immortal domain. Hongzhuang, you've come out of seclusion? Mu Lingbing happened to be near where Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were staying, and her face lit up with joy. Mother, Bailey Hongzhuang was overjoyed and quickly walked over to Mu Lingbing. What are you doing here? I heard that Mo Yunjue had returned today. I thought that you would want to meet up with him, so I came over to take a look. But when I saw that your doors were tightly shut, I didn't want to disturb you. Just as I was about to leave, I saw you open the door. Yin Ju is back. Everyone's faces lit up. It seemed like their judgment was right. That's right, he just came back. Mu Ling Bing nodded with a smile. You can go and see him now. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Bailey Hongzhuang then said, Mother, let's go see him first. We'll go see you later. No problem. Mu Ling Bing smiled. After Mu Ling Bing returned to her room, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also walked towards Mo Yinjue's room. Just as they expected, they saw a familiar figure at the door. Yinju, you're finally back. Xiren strode forward to Mo Yinjue's side. Mo Yinjue turned around. When he saw the familiar figures, his face lit up with a warm smile. Chapter 5682. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Mo Yinjue in front of her. Although they had only been apart for a few months, when she saw him for the first time, she had a completely different feeling. The murderous aura that hit her in the face showed that Mo Yinjue had definitely experienced a baptism of blood during this period of time. Presumably, the mercenary mission he had accepted was not simple. Otherwise, there would not be such a strong murderous aura. Yinjue, it seems that you have improved a lot during this period of time. Even if she did not know Mo Yinjue's true cultivation at this moment, just by feeling his aura, she knew that it was not just a little bit stronger than before. Mo Yinjue's usually cold face raised a faint smile that was almost invisible. It's just a few missions in the forest, that's all. I have improved a little. No one ignored Mo Yinjue's words. His cultivation talent was first class, and, coupled with the fact that he had never slacked off in his cultivation, even if it was just a short few months, they could imagine that he must have been extremely busy during this period of time, and did not slack off at all. Right this time of the Mercenary Guild, did you know Huang Futing? Di Baichen suddenly asked. Mo Yunjue nodded. When I was at the Mercenary Guild, Huang Futing was also a rather famous mercenary, but we did not have much contact before. It was only when you sent the cultivators to find me that I found out that their relationship with you was not shallow, and that was how I got to know them. Their performance at the Mercenary Guild was not bad. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with a trace of expectation. In fact, after getting to know Huang Futing, she felt that this person's ability was extraordinary, but this time he had led so many darkness attribute cultivators to gain experience, so they could not help but be worried. I know that they are all darkness attribute cultivators, but they hid very well, and no one discovered them. Mo Yinjue's tone became gentler. Moreover, they worked very hard during the missions. I could feel that they worked so hard to improve their strength as quickly as possible. You can rest assured that with their strength, there won't be any problems. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichun looked at each other and felt relieved. That's good, then we can rest assured. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang continued. Yunjue, when we returned this time, we handed your letter to the pavilion master of the Shirtian Pavilion. Mo Yunjue paused for a moment, but did not say anything. Bailey Hongzhuang hesitated for a moment. He asked us to take good care of you. When these words were spoken, Mo Yunjue's expression clearly stiffened. He opened his mouth, but did not say anything, as if he did not know what to say. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not say anything more. In fact, even if Mo Yunjue had never mentioned it, they could feel that there was something going on between him and the pavilion master of Shirtian Tower. Otherwise, he would not have been unwilling to go back this time. However, since Mo Yunjue was unwilling to say, they would not ask. Hongzhuang, this time, you have brought your relatives to the upper realm, so you can be completely relieved. Mo Yunjue changed the topic, and his expression was no longer stiff and complicated. Yes, I see that they are living quite freely here, so I am relieved. Chapter 5683. I think father-in-law and mother-in-law would be better off staying here to cultivate. Di Baichun smiled, his handsome face becoming even gentler. Although the Bailey family is not bad, the concentration of elemental energy there is not as good as here. What father-in-law and mother-in-law need most now is to raise their levels of cultivation. It would be better for them to stay here for the time being. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. When she saw Mu Lingbing just now, she could acutely sense that the other's aura had increased. It looked like the results of her cultivation in the training room were not bad. Yunjue, now that you're back, we can cultivate together. Bailey Hongzhuang was in high spirits. This time, we've discovered an excellent place to cultivate. I'm sure you'll be able to raise your level faster than the Mercenary Guild. Mo Yunjue raised his eyebrows, a look of contemplation flashing across his eyes, but he quickly understood. The forest world? That's right, but I guarantee that you won't be able to imagine the changes in the forest world. When Xiren kept him in suspense. When we first discovered it, we were all shocked and almost lost our lives. But this time, you've really picked up a bargain. When he said this, Mo Yunjue frowned, his handsome face revealing a hint of nervousness. Could it be that you've encountered a powerful demon beast inside? You won't be able to guess what I've said. You'll know when you go in. When Xiren deliberately mystified him, he took a step forward, leaving Mo Yunjue with his back facing him. If you can guess it, I'll give you my precious bottle of wine. If you can't guess it, how about you tell a joke? When Xiren turned his head, looking at Mo Yunjue with interest. He and Mo Yunjue had known each other for so long, and this guy had always been as cold as ice. Luckily, they were very familiar with each other, so he did not find it strange. But when he thought of asking Mo Yunjue to tell a joke, he felt that this idea was too interesting. However, what answered him was Mo Yunjue's cold gaze. Mo Yunjue didn't say anything. He just looked at Xiren quietly. As he watched, Xiren could not help but shrug his shoulders and admit defeat. Forget it. I know you're not as interesting as me. Why are you still talking when you know? His voice was as cold as ever. Because Mo Yunjue had just returned, no one disturbed him. They let him have a good rest first, and tomorrow they would go to the forest world to train together. After that, Bailey Hongzhuang went to the cultivation room. Sure enough, everyone was gathered here. From the looks of it, he probably hadn't walked out of the cultivation room for a while. After sensing for a while, they were keenly aware of everyone's progress. Mother, you've already broken through to the starlight mirror? Bailey Hongzhuang was pleasantly surprised. Previously, he had only sensed that Mu Ling Bing's strength had increased. Now that he had carefully sensed it, he realized that she had broken through to the starlight mirror. After all, they had only been in the D family for a short period of time. Mu Ling Bing smiled and nodded. The elemental energy here is very dense. With the addition of some rare treasures, the speed of improvement is naturally very fast. Bailey Hongzhuang looked carefully. As expected, other than Mu Ling Bing, everyone's strength had increased by quite a bit. This cultivation room is really suitable for all of you. Bailey Hongzhuang was delighted. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Chapter 56-84. Noticing the satisfaction on everyone's faces, Bailey Hongzhuang also felt relieved. It seemed that while they were cultivating in seclusion, her mother and grandmother had come by many times and had prepared everything very well. Father, the Bailey family's status in the upper realm is not comparable to the D family. Whether it is cultivation resources or the environment, it is slightly inferior. If you feel comfortable here, why don't you stay here for a while? Bailey Hongzhuang's concerned gaze swept over everyone. Although she felt this was the most suitable place, she still had to ask for everyone's opinion. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay, then smiled and nodded. Hongzhuang, you don't have to worry about us. We're very comfortable here. Lan Yunxiao's expression was gentle, his bright black eyes full of affection. He really couldn't help but like such a well-behaved daughter. As a father, he couldn't do anything for his daughter and instead made her worry about him. He also felt guilty. That's right, Hongzhuang, don't worry. Mu Jins also smiled and said, we usually cultivate and don't have any requirements for the environment, not to mention that everything here has been arranged so well. Noticing everyone's sincere expressions and that there wasn't the slightest bit of reluctance, Bailey Hongzhuang was completely relieved. Di Beichen and I will also be in seclusion for a while. We hope to have a breakthrough in our strength. Perhaps you won't see us for a while. However, if you need anything, you only need to put a note on our door. We will definitely come over as soon as we see it, Bailey Hongzhuang said. No problem. You can all cultivate at ease. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun weren't in a hurry to return to the abandoned immortal forest. Instead, they accompanied their families for dinner and strolled around Emperor Cloud City for a while before returning. Di Beichun originally wanted to find his father to ask about the crossing immortal domain, but he didn't expect that Di Yujue was also in seclusion, so he could only return empty-handed. Father has also been trying to break through to a higher realm recently. I hope he can succeed. Di Beichun's eyes were filled with anticipation. Di Yujue was a very outstanding genius in the upper realm. If it were not for the fact that Di Beichun had put more effort into finding him, he would be even more powerful now. Even so, he was no weaker than the Jun family and the Xiao family. On the contrary, he was even more stunning. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. With father's talent, breaking through is only a matter of time. He will definitely succeed. There was still no news from the Xiao family and the Jun family. The Di family had specially sent cultivators to keep an eye on them. As long as there was any news, they would be sent back as soon as possible. The next day, Mo Yunjue followed everyone to the forest world. He was originally very puzzled about the forest world. He did not know what kind of amazing discovery everyone had made, so much so that Ziren had been so mysterious. However, when he saw Zhongli Mu, his expression changed abruptly. His eyes were filled with astonishment. It wasn't just him. Zhongli Mu was also surprised when he saw Mo Yunjue. Beichun, you brought a new friend? Di Beichun nodded slightly. Yunjue is our good brother. We used to cultivate together, but he was busy a while ago, so he didn't come. Now, I'll introduce him to you. Hello, I'm Zhongli Mu. Chapter 5685. I'm Mo Yunjue. Mo Yunjue replied, but he could not help but size up Zhongli Mu. Even though it was just a glance, he could feel that this cultivator, who was much younger than them, was much stronger than him. Even though there were many outstanding cultivators in the upper realm, he had never felt such a huge gap between them. Furthermore, Zhongli Mu was so young. It was hard to imagine how talented he was. There's actually someone in the forest world. What's going on? Mo Yunjue secretly transmitted his voice. This was too shocking for him. He could not figure it out for a moment. Noticing the shock on Mo Yunjue's face, Ziren's smile had a hint of pride. He raised his eyebrows and said smugly, "It's rare to see such an expression on your face. I'll reluctantly tell you." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at Ziren's smug look. They could not help but laugh. This guy was always thinking about things that others could not think of. After Ziren told them the whole story, Mo Yunjue was still in disbelief. If he had not received confirmation from Bailey Hongzhuang's people, he would have thought that Ziren had made up a story to deceive him. The immortal region actually exists in this world. Could it be that everyone in the immortal region is an immortal? Immortal. This word had been passed down for a long time. Ever since they heard various stories when they were young, they had always yearned for immortals. They did not expect to come to the immortal region. I've asked this question before. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, then repeated Zhongli Mu's explanation. After hearing all this, Mo Yunjue's eyes were filled with even more shock. This senior is really amazing. In just a few words, he explained everything so simply and casually. Thinking about it carefully, it's true. I was too narrow-minded before. Yunjue, you're too modest. While everyone was talking, Zhongli Mu's figure appeared again. He smiled at everyone and said, "Grandpa, you said that he would teach you sword techniques today. Come with me." Once these words were spoken, everyone's faces lit up with interest. During this period of time, they've been helping the various seniors tidy up. However, it was very rare for him to receive guidance. Who would have thought that Senior You would actually say that he would teach them sword techniques today? How could they not be happy? In the upper realm, although they had learned a lot of martial skills, they did not know much about sword techniques. Since Senior You had decided to teach them, his actions should not be simple. Yinju, you're so lucky. You can learn the swordsmanship as soon as you come today. Shangwan Ying couldn't help but say with excitement in her eyes. Everyone followed behind Zhongli Mu and quickly rushed forward. Zhongli Mu's speed was as fast as lightning. He shuttled through the forest and disappeared in the blink of an eye. In order to keep up with Zhongli Mu's speed, Everyone had to use all their skills. However, the former's movement technique was clearly much better than theirs. Even if they used all their strength, the distance between them was constantly widening. After rushing for hundreds of miles, Zhongli Mu's figure finally stopped. When he turned around, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had yet to arrive. Everyone continued forward. They could only hear the sound of flowing water in front of them, but they did not dare to slack off at all. Chapter 56:86. After everyone stopped, their faces were flushed red, and they stood on the spot, gasping for breath. The moist water vapor blew against their faces, bringing a sense of coolness to everyone. Everyone turned around and realized that they had unknowingly arrived at a river. I never thought that there would be such a majestic river in the middle of the abandoned, immortal forest. Shangguan Yingying exclaimed. In her line of sight, the river that was a few hundred feet wide seemed to have divided the entire abandoned, immortal forest into two. The river flowed rapidly. Even though they were standing on the riverbank, they could feel the speed of the current. It was as if everything would be washed away in the blink of an eye. In front of the river was a majestic waterfall. The waterfall was a few hundred feet tall, as if it was a silver screen. The rumbling sound of the waterfall could be heard continuously. The river flowed down majestically, splashing water droplets that were a few hundred feet high, causing the surrounding air to be moist. This waterfall is so majestic. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the huge waterfall in front of her. She looked extremely small in front of the waterfall. Zhongli Mu, did you bring us here because Senior Yu wants to teach us swordsmanship here? Di Beichun turned to look at Zhongli Mu. He felt that there must be a reason for bringing them here. Could it be that the swordsmanship had something to do with the waterfall? Zhongli Mu nodded. That's right. Grandpa, you asked me to bring you here. You're all here. Yu Hong's figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. He looked at Di Beichun and the others, and finally his eyes stopped on Mo Yunjue. Why is there another young man today? Yu Hong frowned. Seeing this, Di Beichun stepped forward and clasped his hands together. Senior Yu, this is Mo Yunjue. He's also our best friend. He was out training earlier, so he came late. I hope you don't mind, but I'm only going to teach this swordsmanship to the few of you. I'm not going to teach it to everyone. Yu Hong lifted his eyes and placed his hands behind his back. He looked arrogant and looked away, as if he was not willing to teach them. Everyone's hearts tightened when they saw this scene. In fact, they had been worried about these problems before, but they thought that the seniors were easy to talk to and might not care about this. But now, it seemed that the situation was not as simple as they thought. Mo Yunjue's expression changed as well. He could feel that this senior before him was extremely powerful. If he could receive his guidance, he would definitely benefit greatly. However, it was clear that his appearance had displeased this senior, and he was unwilling to implicate everyone because of him. In the next moment, Mo Yunjue also took a step forward and said, Senior, this junior's appearance has disturbed you. I hope that a great person like you will not hold a grudge against this lowly person. I will leave now. Everyone couldn't help but feel anxious as they turned to look at Yu Hong. They really didn't want Mo Yunjue to miss out on such an opportunity. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully sized up Yu Hong. According to her understanding, this Senior Yu was a sentimental person who is usually quite interesting. This matter should have taken a turn for the better. After pondering for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly came up with a plan. Senior Yu, it's indeed our fault for bringing Yunju here so abruptly. But this time, Yunjue also brought a greeting gift. He knows that you like to eat exotic delicacies, so he specially prepared many special dishes. I hope you will like them. Chapter 56:87. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the arrogant Yu Hong's expression suddenly changed. His round eyes widened as he leaned his head forward and asked curiously, Are you telling the truth? Seeing Yu Hong's reaction, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart calmed down. It seemed that her judgment was right. If she wanted to tempt these seniors, she had to use her trump card. Of course. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Di Beichun and the others also smiled because they knew that the seniors were all foodies, so this time when they went back, they brought a lot of food. Although there were many monsters in the abandoned immortal forest, there were only a few monster groups that were relatively close to each other. There was no doubt that there were fewer of the corresponding species. Emperor Cloud City was different. There were all kinds of food. Last night, they made a special trip to Emperor Cloud City and bought some of the more famous food there in order to please the seniors. Now, what they needed most was the seniors to guide them in their cultivation. As long as they could please the seniors, it would be easier to achieve their goal. Originally, they wanted to use this trump card at noon, but they didn't expect to use it now. As she spoke, Bailey Hong Zhuang took out a plate of desserts from her chinquin bag and handed it to Yu Hong. Senior Yu, today you have to guide us in swordsmanship. It's really hard for you. Try this dessert first. If you like it, we will definitely prepare more in the future. Yu Hong took the snacks from Bailey Hong Zhuang and nodded with satisfaction. I was wondering why Granny Hua liked you so much. You're really likable. Thank you for your praise. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled faintly. She had a good impression of these seniors. Everyone understood that with the strength of these few seniors, they must be stunning figures without compare. However, these seniors deliberately gave them a chance to coax them. Since this kid is already here, let's stay together. Yu Hong took a bite of the snack and said casually, Anyway, even if I don't teach you today, you guys will tell him anyway. It's better to stay and cultivate together. That way, he won't say that this old man is stingy. Hearing this, everyone smiled happily. Thank you, Senior Yu. What I want you to do today is very simple. Cut open the waterfall. Yu Hong pointed at the majestic waterfall in front of him and said calmly. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned. When Ziren almost choked on his own saliva. Cough, cough. When Ziren looked at the majestic waterfall in front of him and said, Senior Yu, are you talking about this waterfall? Yu Hong nodded. Of course it's this waterfall. But Senior, aren't you going to teach us swordsmanship? Shang Guaniying was a little confused. There didn't seem to be an absolute relationship between the two. I want you to use your swords to cut open this waterfall. When you can cut open this waterfall, it will prove that your swordsmanship has improved. Yu Hong did not say much. He carried the snacks and walked toward the wooden house. Everyone looked at each other as they gazed at Yu Hong's back. It was already extremely difficult for them to stand in the middle of such a waterfall without being washed away, let alone cut it apart with a sword. Chapter 5688. Grandpa Yu has already left. Hurry up and train. Don't waste any more time. Zhong Limu laughed. Looking at Zhong Limu's expression, Ziren's lips twitched. Are you sure you're not joking with us? Since Yu Hong had already said so, everyone felt that it was impossible for him to make up something like this just to tease them. Hence, everyone began to move. When Ziren's body moved, directly in front of the waterfall, in the middle of the river. There was no place to stand in the middle of the river, so he could only cover his feet with elemental energy and control his body to stand on the water surface. When Ziren held a sharp sword in his hand and was about to slash forward when a sudden wave came from the rushing river, washing him far away. Ah, when Ziren shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of the rushing river. When Ziren only managed to climb out of the river when he reached the downstream. Seeing this scene, everyone looked at each other in dismay. In front of such a terrifying nature, their strength paled in comparison. Most importantly, standing on the water surface was already unstable, and they would face the pressure of the rushing river at any time. It was simply too difficult to do this. However, none of them chose to give up. One by one, they rushed to the middle of the river and began to try. However, although it was beautiful to imagine, it was extremely difficult to put it into practice. If they were not careful, they would follow in Ziren's footsteps. Ouch! Voices rang out one after another. In a short period of time, everyone's clothes were drenched in sweat. When Ziren walked out of the river again, he could not help but look at Zhong Limu and ask, Are you sure Senior Yu is not joking with us? Zhong Limu shook his head. Of course not. I used to train like this too. His words immediately attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Zhong Limu curiously. You used to train like this too? Then did you succeed? Of course. Zhong Limu nodded matter-of-factly, but it was Grandpa who allowed me to train here. At that time, he told me to train here nonstop. If I did not succeed, I was not allowed to learn anything else. When I first started, I was like all of you. I was often washed downstream by the rushing river. However, after a long time, I gained some experience and slowly got better. So, you can cut this waterfall in half. Everyone's eyes lit up. The waterfall in front of them was so shocking. Even if they used all their skills, they could only form a crack that was 100 meters long on the waterfall, which would disappear very quickly. If they wanted to cut the entire waterfall in two, the difference was too great. Sure, Zhong Limu took a step forward. Since you don't believe me, I'll show you. Seeing this, everyone walked to the riverbank and looked at Zhong Limu expectantly. Zhong Limu's figure flashed and landed in the middle of the riverbank. He ignored the rushing water as his gaze landed on the magnificent waterfall in front of him. In the next moment, he raised the sharp sword in his hand. The origin energy in his body gushed out, and a terrifying aura instantly expanded. Then, he slashed forward with his sword. It was an indomitable sword, as if it was the sharpest weapon in the world. It cut through the air, space, and everything. Chapter 5689. At this moment, no one was in the mood to pay attention to the pain because the scene before their eyes was simply too shocking. The mighty waterfall that seemed capable of washing away everything was suddenly split into two distinct waterfalls by a beam of golden sword chi. This ray of sword energy was incomparably sharp. Not only did it cut the waterfall in half, it also cut through space itself. Most importantly, even though Zhong Limu had already put away his sword, the waterfall did not immediately close up. Instead, it paused for a few seconds before merging back together. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, their faces filled with amazement. Even though it was only a few seconds, in reality, against a waterfall like this, it was extremely difficult to stay even a second longer. Previously, when it tried to cut through the waterfall, they only managed to create a small crack. In the blink of an eye, the crack disappeared as if it was never there. In comparison, the difference was obvious. Xiren stared blankly at the scene before him. He no longer thought that Senior Yu was joking with them. If they could really learn this move, then it would be incredible. At least, based on the people they had met so far, there were not many who could withstand this move. Zhong Limu, this move of yours is too powerful. Shang Guanying could not help but exclaim. She clasped her hands in front of her chest, and her delicate face was full of admiration. Zhong Limu scratched the back of his head embarrassedly. His young and inexperienced face was filled with shyness. This move of mine is actually nothing. You guys haven't seen Grandpa Yu's move. It's much stronger than mine. Regarding this, no one doubted it. Even though Grandpa Yu had never made a move and looked like an ordinary old man, they all knew very well that once this old man made a move, it would be earth-shattering. Zhong Limu, now we are all confident. Di Beichun smiled faintly. His deep and charming eyes were full of confidence. As long as there was something to gain, no matter how difficult the process was, they could persevere. Not only Di Beichun, but everyone else's heart was ignited with hope. As long as they could learn this move, their fighting abilities would greatly increase. For a moment, no one doubted this sword training method anymore. One by one, they rushed to the center of the river and began to practice facing the waterfall. Facing this river that was hundreds of meters wide, even if everyone stood side by side in the middle of the river, they still seemed extremely small. As he swung his sword again and again, his attribute power continued to surge out and infuse into the sword. However, compared to the river, the sword chi that he swung out was undoubtedly extremely small. The river was turbulent, and waves came one after another. Just maintaining balance and standing on the surface of the river was already difficult enough, let alone swinging a sword. The moment he swung his sword, balance was the most difficult to grasp. If he was not careful, he would be swept away by the waves. Ah! A familiar voice rang out, but it was drowned out by the river in an instant. Plop, plop. The sound of things falling into the water continued to ring out. Even under the sun, everyone's clothes were still wet. After failing again and again, the crowd came up from the bottom of the river again and again. Unlike their previous helplessness, no matter how many times they failed, the faith in their eyes never wavered. Again and again, he tried again and again, trying again and again. Chapter 5690. Although the sword chi of the people in front of him could not be compared to his own, he could tell from the burning flames in their eyes that they were determined and serious. His grandfather had said that Beichin and the others were talented in cultivation, but their environment was different from his. Their cultivation resources were not as good as his, so their strength was not as good as his. He had been cultivating with his grandfather since he was young. Granny Hua would often refine pills for him, and he had almost never stopped taking medicinal baths. If Beichin and the others were in such an environment, their strength would probably not be weaker than his. When Ziren walked up from the bottom of the river again, his steps were no longer as steady and fast as before. His delicate and elegant face showed unconcealable tiredness, and he could not help but pant as he walked, and he was holding a fish in his hand. When I fell down just now, I hit a fish and it seemed to have fainted. I think we can make a fish dish tonight. Ziren raised the fish in his hand, and a bright smile appeared on his face again. After seeing Ziren's funny look, the others, who were also tired, could not help but chuckle. Good idea. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, and a playful and mischievous smile appeared on her exquisite face. She was like a forest elf, extremely cute. Ziren, how big is your body to be able to knock this fish out? Why didn't I do the same? Shangguan Yingying scolded with a smile, but the smile in her eyes could not be stopped. I think this fish must have seen me working too hard, so it fainted on purpose. Reward me well. Ziren said proudly. Everyone looked at each other. This guy was as thick-skinned as ever. Why don't we catch a fish if one of us falls down? How about it? Ziren looked interested. Although this river is wide and rapid, the water is clear. The fish should taste very delicious. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the fish in Ziren's hand. This fish was obviously different from the fish they usually saw. Its body was more beautiful, and its scales reflected a dazzling light under the sun. With just a glance, she could tell that the fish must be more chewy than usual. The river here is rapid. Ordinary fish cannot survive here. This fish is indeed different. I believe it will taste good. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, when Ziren's face also showed interest. Really? Of course. If you don't believe me, ask Yingying. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. I believe you. When Ziren's eyebrows raised and smiled, he raised the fish in his hand. Di Beichin looked at the interested when Ziren and shook his head helplessly. This guy hasn't changed at all after so many years. Hearing you say that, you seem to have seen it many times? Mo Yunjue said. I always felt that with my talent and cultivation, it should be more than that. Now I have finally found a reason. Di Beichin sighed. As soon as these words came out, everyone turned their heads and looked at Di Beichin doubtfully. What reason? In the past, when I was cultivating, this guy would always interrupt and drag me to do other things. This was very common. Di Beichin looked at Ziren with a smile, looking like he was going to settle scores. Chapter 5691. Night slowly fell, and the abandoned immortal forest was shrouded in darkness. The moonlight reflected off the surface of the river. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest tried again and again, as if they did not feel the passage of time. It's getting late. Let's go back. Zhongli Mu stood up and reminded everyone who was still cultivating. However, everyone seemed to be numb to it, and they continued to practice like machines. They did not know when they would be able to master this move, but they knew that Zhongli Mu had tried millions of times before he succeeded. No matter what kind of martial skill it would definitely become a powerful killing weapon after practicing it millions of times. Granny and the rest should be hungry. Zhongli Mu said again. The weather had been getting colder recently, and the sky was getting dark earlier. However, it was time to go back. As soon as these words came out, everyone who was still immersed in cultivation immediately came back to their senses. Bailey Hongzhuang stopped what she was doing and quickly jumped onto the shore. Looking at the sky, she was shocked. I didn't expect it to be so late. You're all so focused. Zhongli Mu smiled. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest so serious, he could not help but think of himself when he was young. In the beginning, he was not so serious. On the contrary, he would often slack off. However, his grandfather would always chase after him with a wooden stick, urging him every day. Gradually, it became a habit for him. In comparison, he was not serious at all. Let's go back quickly. Senior and the rest are hungry. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone. It's really late today. Everyone nodded. They had agreed that they would be in charge of cooking, and the senior would guide them in their cultivation. Now that the senior had started to guide them, they could not forget their duties. At the same time, Yu Hong and Hua Shukong were sitting outside the house, looking at the stars in the sky with a relaxed expression. Old Yu, did you teach them swordsmanship today? Hua looked at Yu Hong casually and asked, These little guys have been cooking for us for so many days. It's time for them to start cultivating. Yu Hong picked up a cup of tea from the side and took a sip before continuing. However, they brought another little fellow today. They said that he's their good brother. Hua Shukong glanced at Yu Hong and looked away. I can tell from your expression that you've been bribed. This newcomer is not bad. He even brought a greeting gift. If that's the case, doesn't that mean you'll have to teach anyone in the future? Hua's eyes turned serious. Yu Hong waved his hand. Of course not. I only agreed because I'm very satisfied with these little fellows. I'll only do this once, and there won't be a next time. Umph. Hua snorted coldly. What delicious food did this little guy use to bribe you? Then shouldn't we wait for them to come back? Yu Hong looked away guiltily. Old man Yu, I've known you for so many years. How could I not know what kind of person you are? Hua sneered. I smelled the snacks on you as soon as you came back. The older you get, the more you like to eat alone. Look at what you're saying. I just ate a little while I was at it. When Zhongli Shaoran walked over, he saw the three old fellows sitting in the courtyard and frowned slightly. Mu'er, and the rest aren't back yet? Chapter 5692. Hearing that, Zhongli Shaoran did not ask any more questions. Instead, he found a seat and sat down. This smell? Old Lady Hua, you've prepared a medicinal bath? Your nose is quite sharp. Zhongli Shaoran's eyes flashed with surprise. From the thickness of the medicinal smell, you've prepared quite a bit. You can't be biased, right? Hua's face was calm. I'm a fair person, unlike a certain fellow who likes to eat alone. Cough, cough. Knowing that Hua was talking about him, Yu Hong coughed dryly. Since he was already feeling guilty, he could only remain silent. Why are you few old fellows so free? Zhongli Shaoran did not understand. Don't you usually dislike trouble? He had known these few old fellows for quite some time. Naturally, he knew their personalities. Thinking back to when he asked these three fellows to teach Mu'er some skills, they were still hesitant. Although they agreed in the end, he still had to put in a lot of effort. After that, some cultivators from the abandoned immortal forest came to ask for guidance. However, these few fellows had no intention of teaching them at all. Everyone returned empty-handed. This time, I got to know these few young people. Although he agreed to cultivate with Mu'er, he did not have any intention of teaching them. He knew that these few young people were not from the immortal domain. It should be a coincidence that they came here. However, he did not know what treasure they used to come here. However, these few old fellows were not normal. This made him very surprised. Indeed, we don't like trouble. However, these few fellows are not troublesome either. Hua Shukong slowly said, These few fellows' eyes are very pure. Perhaps they've been in the abandoned immortal forest for too long and found it boring. Isn't it good to have a few young people to add some life? Indeed, eating tasteless food all day long. My mouth is so bland. Yu Hong sighed. It's so good now. Most importantly, it's pleasing to the eyes. Hua's face was full of satisfaction. Look at how good these few fellows are. It's much better than looking at your faces all day long. Old Lady Hua, you can praise others if you want. Why do you have to bring me into it? Yu Hong was unhappy. When I was young, I also charmed thousands of girls. TSK, forget it. Zhongli Shaoran looked at the three old men in front of him. He didn't know if the situation was as simple as they said. He was quite fond of these young people. However, to be able to make these three old fellows act out of character, it could be considered their ability. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned, they saw the four seniors waiting for them in the courtyard. They immediately felt even more guilty. "Senior, we're sorry. We came back late." Everyone hurriedly apologized. "Let's go prepare dinner." Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying quickly walked to the kitchen. When Ziren raised the bamboo basket in his hand and said with a smile, "We caught a lot of fresh fish today," the four seniors looked at everyone and didn't say anything. However, when their gazes landed on Mo Yunjua, they couldn't help but size him up a little more. This was the first time they had seen this young man. Chapter 5693. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they came to the kitchen. They had been worried that they would be scolded for coming back late. Now, they were the ones asking for help. Even if the seniors seemed to be easy to get along with, if they were slightly dissatisfied, they would have no chance at all. It seems that the four seniors are in a good mood. They didn't complain about us coming back late. Shangwan Yingying breathed a sigh of relief. "We have to cook a few dishes tonight." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "The fish Ziren caught looks good." "Of course. The fish I caught are of different species, but I'll have to rely on your skills to cook." Ziren looked proud. Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying were very fast, and with the help of others, their speed was even faster. Plate after plate of dishes were served. In addition to some local specialties they bought from the Emperor Cloud City, a table of dishes was soon ready. After preparing some things, Bailey Hongzhuang sat down weakly. After practicing for the whole day, her right hand was a little numb from swinging the sword. Coupled with the washing of the river, her right hand was a little tired. Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking about whether or not she should use silver needles to help everyone relieve the sore and swollen feeling. Only then could they continue to practice tomorrow in a good state. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to bear it for a few days. However, at this moment, the figure of Hua Hua appeared in front of everyone. "You must be hungry too, right? Come and eat with us." Everyone smiled and waved their hands. "Granny Hua, we're not hungry." "Don't say that. Come quickly. Otherwise, we'll be the ones who mistreat you." Granny Hua smiled. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, but still followed behind Granny Hua. Yu Hong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others who were slightly restrained. He smiled and waved his hand. "Little guys, just treat us as your elders. Don't be shy." "Thank you, senior." Hui Shukong smiled. "How are the results of your practice today?" Everyone looked at each other, looking a little embarrassed. "We didn't have any results today." "Old man Hua, aren't you talking nonsense?" Yu Hong waved his hand. "It's impossible to master it in a day or two. You can only succeed if you practice day and night. Senior Yu, we will definitely work hard in our cultivation." Yu Hong nodded slightly. "I know that all of you have been training very hard, so Granny Hua has prepared a gift for all of you." "Granny Hua?" Everyone was surprised. "If you're done eating, go to the house over there. I prepared a medicinal bath for you. After a day of high-intensity cultivation, soak in a medicinal bath and cultivate. Your cultivation speed will greatly increase." Everyone's eyes lit up. Previously, they had heard from Zhongli Mu that he would often soak in medicinal baths after cultivating. They did not expect that they would have the opportunity to do so. "Thank you, Grandma Hua." Everyone bowed, expressing their gratitude with words and expressions. Although he hadn't soaked in it before, he could guess that the ingredients used for this medicinal bath weren't simple. When everyone saw the bathtubs in front of them, they were touched. The material of the bathtub looked very new. Obviously, it was specially prepared for them in the past 2 days. Chapter 5694. Just by smelling the scent of the medicinal bath, she knew that there were many precious spiritual herbs here. She could recognize most of them, but there were also some that she did not know about. It was not because she could not recognize them, but because she had never come into contact with them before. In the abandoned immortal forest, she found some spiritual herbs that she did not recognize. It was clear that there were many differences between the immortal region and the upper realm. Not only that, some of the rarer herbs in the upper realm could be found here. If her judgment was correct, she lived in the upper realm 1,000 years ago. She had never come into contact with the immortal region. Therefore, if she came to the immortal region in the future, she would have to read more books to understand the effects of the spiritual herbs in the immortal region. Let's go on quickly. This medicinal bath is very beneficial to our bodies. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Shangwaning Ing and Ling did not delay and hurriedly entered the tub. A wave of warmth surrounded everyone, and their tired bodies immediately relaxed. The medicinal power entered their bodies through their pores, quietly improving their bodies. Granny Hua must have spent a lot of effort to prepare this medicinal bath. Shangwan Ying looked at the brown medicinal water. She could feel that after the medicinal power entered her body seemed to have become stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Just preparing these herbs took a lot of effort, and also mixing them together. As she said that, a smile bloomed on her face. Granny Hua is really good. At that moment, the three of them felt that they were very lucky to have met a few kind seniors to guide them in their cultivation after coming to the abandoned immortal forest. In another room, Deep Beichun, when Ziren, Mo Yunjue, and Bai Li Yin-che were also soaking in the medicinal bath. Even though the four of them did not know much about medicine, they could feel the uniqueness of this medicinal bath. If we cultivate at such a high intensity every day, coupled with the medicinal power of this medicinal bath, I'm afraid our strength will increase very quickly. Granny Hua is really a good person. We barely do anything every day, and she actually helps us like this. Ziren's heart was filled with warmth, and he was determined to treat Granny Hua well. I didn't expect to meet such a kind-hearted old man in the immortal realms. How rare. Your luck is really good. Mo Yunjue, who had always been a man of few words, also spoke up. Usually, the people he met would not get up early if there was no benefit to be gained. It was rare to see someone who was willing to help others like this. Xiao Xuanzi looked at Bai Li Yin-che, who was soaking in the medicinal bath with a look of enjoyment, and it could not help but feel envious. Yin-che, doesn't this feel great? Bai Li Yin-che opened his eyes and raised his eyebrows. Of course. Do you want to try? Xiao Xuanzi nodded. Yes, but it's inconvenient for you to be covered in hair. I think we should forget about it. Bai Li Yin-che chuckled. Why don't you transform into a human too? You've already succeeded anyway. That's right. Now that things have come to this, you don't have to be so secretive. We're all men. What are you afraid of? Ziren also spoke up. Until now, Xiao Xuanzi had not transformed into a human in front of them, and they could not help but be curious. Xiao Xuanzi, this is a good opportunity. Isn't it great to cultivate with us every day? Di Beichen said. Chapter 5695. Seeing Xiao Xuanzi's firm refusal, everyone looked at each other and felt a little helpless. In my opinion, Xiao Xuanzi is too fat. He doesn't even dare to let us see his real face. When Ziren couldn't help but laugh. Speaking of which, we really don't have any fatties in our team. Xiao Xuanzi, it's not a bad idea for you to join us and enrich our team. I don't want to. Xiao Xuanzi snorted, walked to the side, and sat down. And Mo Yunjue glanced at Ziren and said, Ziren, you're thinking that if Xiao Xuanzi joins us, then you'll have someone to scapegoat for you, right? As soon as he said that, Di Beichen and Bai Li Yin-che also reacted. Recalling Yu Hong's look of disdain when he talked about Ziren, after thinking about it carefully, it was indeed possible. Ahem. Being poked at the key point, Ziren glanced around, wanting to change the topic, but found that the three people's eyes were still on him. Obviously, he couldn't avoid it, so he could only helplessly say, Who asked you guys to look so devilish? In the past, at least I had Ling Xiao as my companion, but now, Ling Xiao isn't here. I'm the only one left. Can't you guys understand me? Do you think I'm easy? Hearing Ziren's sorrowful question, the three people's lips twitched slightly. Why are you guys looking at me like that? Seeing the three people looking at him strangely, Ziren couldn't help but ask. Huh? The three people laughed. Bai Li Yin-che even held his stomach, tears coming out of the corner of his eyes. Ziren, you're a man. We didn't notice that you care so much about this problem. I don't want to care. Ziren rolled his eyes. Look at Granny Hua and the others. This is an era where looks matter, Sai. Bailey Hongzhuang sat in the bathtub, closed her eyes, and began to cultivate the demon summoning scripture. The rich vitality in the air was mixed with the pure medicinal power of the medicinal bath as she breathed in and out. It merged into her body and entered her limbs and bones. It flowed along her meridians and finally merged into her dantian. Ling and Shangguan Ying were also focused on cultivating, unwilling to waste any time. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes when the first rays of the morning sun shone into the room. Feeling that the water in the bathtub was still warm, a trace of surprise appeared in his eyes. It's really interesting that the water temperature can be maintained like this. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, Shangguan Ying and Ling also exited their cultivation state. They saw that the originally rich color of the potion had gradually become transparent. It was obvious that the potion had been absorbed by their bodies. Other than that, some stains could be vaguely seen, which were discharged from their bodies. These stains are somewhat similar to the stains we get when we cleanse our marrow and meridians. Could it be that this medicinal bath has such an effect? Shangguan Ying said, in surprise. Marrow and meridians cleansing could improve a cultivator's physique, making it more suitable for cultivation. However, after a cultivator had undergone the first cleansing, it would be extremely difficult for them to achieve a similar effect again. Now, they had only soaked in the medicinal bath once, and it had such an effect. It was really a surprise. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the water in the bathtub, her clear eyes filled with surprise and surprise. That's right, it does have such an effect. Chapter 5696. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I had a similar opportunity before, so there were fewer impurities. Back then, in Bai Yunjiao's historical remains, she soaked in the pool and her body improved. Although these differences weren't obvious, one could feel the difference when cultivating. This was due to the fact that not many impurities were discharged. However, just being able to do this was already very shocking. I wonder what ingredients Granny Hua added. Bailey Hongzhuang was amazed. She was sure that Granny Hua's medical skills were amazing. Even though the immortal region had more spiritual herbs than the upper realm, she believed that not everyone could create such a medicinal bath. Zhong Limu had soaked in this medicinal bath since he was young, so the impurities in his body must have been expelled. It was no wonder that his cultivation talent was so shocking. If she was able to learn the prescription and bring back the spiritual grasses from the abandoned immortal forest, she would be able to hand them over to the elders. Presumably, the elder's strength would also increase. However, although Granny Hua was easy to get along with, she might not be willing to teach this method to others. Furthermore, Granny Hua had only agreed to guide them in their cultivation. Hongzhuang, what are you thinking about? Shangguan Ying waved her hand in front of Bailey Hongzhuang's face when she saw that she was suddenly lost in thought. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her senses and shook her head with a smile. Nothing. Let's go out. Prepare a simple breakfast. We should go out and cultivate. Ling was not good at cooking, but she had learned a little from following Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Ying. At least, the task of preparing the side dishes was now in her hands. With a wave of her hand, the ingredients were cleanly processed. When Di Beichen and the rest came out, they realized that breakfast was already prepared. Everyone immediately walked towards the waterfall. As they walked, they munched on their dry rations. When they arrived, everyone could immediately enter cultivation mode. The morning air was slightly chilly. The cold wind blew on everyone's bodies, making their clothes seem slightly thin. However, everyone's eyes were burning with the flames of war, as if they couldn't feel the cold at all. In the next moment, everyone's figures flashed and arrived on the surface of the river. Originally, just standing here was already very difficult. Every wave that came was a test for them. It wasn't until last night that everyone managed to hold on for a little longer. However, after a night of rest, there seemed to be a sense of unfamiliarity. Plop, plop. A loud splash was heard, and everyone was accidentally washed downstream again. The river water was bone-chillingly cold, and even his body stiffened a little. Once again, he would return and join the group practicing his swordsmanship, and the cycle would repeat. After falling into the water 3 times in a row, everyone finally regained the feeling they had last night and stood a little more firmly. Of course, he would still accidentally fall into the water from time to time, but the frequency was undoubtedly lower than yesterday. When Granny Hua and the rest woke up, they found that breakfast was already prepared, and Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were nowhere to be seen. These little guys are really serious about cultivation. They are quite similar to me in the past. Hua Shukong chuckled, and there was a trace of satisfaction in his voice. Chapter 5697. Previously, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had been staying in the wooden house. Because Yu Hong had not yet taught them how to cultivate, they spent most of their time here. They would only follow him out to cultivate if he came. He didn't expect them to leave first today. Of course, Mu-er, you're the laziest one. Granny Hua smiled. Yu Hong nodded. I remember Mu-er was always lazy when he was cultivating. It was Zhong Li Kong who chased after him with a wooden stick every day that forced him to cultivate. Isn't that so? If Mu-er had been so diligent, his cultivation would be much higher now. Hua Shukong laughed. Zhong Li Mu's face turned red when he heard everyone's words. He hurriedly said, I know. I'll go cultivate now. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhong Li Mu ran away like a wisp of smoke. If he continued to stay here, he was afraid that even his grandfather would scold him. Everyone laughed even more when they saw Zhong Li Mu run faster than a rabbit. Mu is simple and honest. He just said a few words and ran away. Zhong Li Xiao shook his head. Looks like Mu doesn't need to be supervised with these little fellows here. Mu is usually with us old fellows and rarely sees people of the same generation. That's why he doesn't feel nervous. Now that he knows how people of the same generation cultivate, he knows what's going on. This is a good thing. Hua Shukong smiled. I think you're here to freeload. These little fellows have already prepared breakfast before they left. When Zhong Li Mu arrived at the waterfall, he discovered that everyone was there. From the looks of it, everyone had been cultivating here for quite some time. I didn't expect you to come so early. When I went to Granny Hua's place to look for you, you weren't there. Hearing Zhong Li Mu's familiar voice, everyone turned around and smiled. You're here. We thought that you usually wake up a little late, so we didn't disturb you. Zhong Li Mu curled his lips. I woke up late today and got scolded by my grandfather. Looks like I'll have to wake up early tomorrow. You'll have to call me. Everyone was slightly taken aback. They did not expect such a situation to occur. They all nodded and said, We will definitely call you in the future. Seeing this, Zhong Li Mu smiled and said, Then all of you should stay here and cultivate properly. If you want to stand firmly on the surface of the river, you have to control your elemental energy to the smallest detail. This doesn't have much to do with strength. All you need to do is train more. I'm going to cultivate above the waterfall. Understood. Everyone nodded. In fact, they had also realized this during the day of cultivation. The reason why they fell into the river was because they did not have enough control over their essence energy, so they could not stand steadily on the surface of the river. Once the waves hit, the water surface would become different. He had to control it immediately, or he wouldn't be able to stand firm. Normally, everyone would pay attention to improving their control over their origin energy when they were cultivating. However, the requirements at that time were not high, so it did not appear to be difficult. But now that the requirements were higher, his control paled in comparison. Zhong Li Mu, why are you training at the waterfall? Shangguan Yingying asked. Grandpa said that my movement technique is not good enough. If I follow the waterfall upstream and succeed, my movement technique will improve greatly. Chapter 5698. Even though they were a certain distance away from the waterfall, they could still feel the force of the water rushing down. Looking at the height of the waterfall, wasn't it too difficult to walk up directly? For a moment, the corners of everyone's lips twitched slightly. This kind of cultivation method was really an eye-opener for them. I finally understand why Zhong Li Mu's strength is so terrifying despite being younger than us. Xiren sighed. His cultivation method is really too terrifying. Di Baichen nodded slightly. Although this cultivation method is very simple, it's much more difficult than our usual cultivation. Whether it was for them to practice their swordsmanship here, or for Zhong Li Mu to practice his movement technique, it was very simple to do, but it was very difficult to do. However, it could be seen from Zhong Li Mu that once it was done, it would definitely not only improve in one aspect. Until now, I can only walk halfway up the waterfall before I'll be washed down by the water. However, I believe that as long as I practice for a while more, I'll succeed. I'll go first." Zhong Limu waved his hand. His youthful face was filled with endless youth under the sunlight, and his bright and sunny appearance gave everyone more motivation. "Come, let's continue to practice and strive to succeed as soon as possible." On this day, when Xiren used his fishing techniques to catch a lot of fish, naturally, he couldn't avoid making fish for dinner. However, he changed the cooking method today, and it tasted very good. In the following days, everyone was busy with their cultivation. When they returned, Granny Hua would prepare a medicinal bath for them. Regarding this, everyone expressed their gratitude, and Granny Hua's face was full of kindness. Cultivating in this medicinal bath allowed everyone's cultivation to increase extremely quickly. Furthermore, the origin energy here was much denser and purer than the upper realm. Gradually, everyone was able to stand on the surface of the river without worrying about falling down. This discovery made everyone happy. Although their sword aura didn't improve much, being able to stand here was already a huge improvement. Usually because they would always fall into the river and walk back from downstream. Most of their time was spent on this. Now, everyone could wholeheartedly practice their swordsmanship, swinging the sword continuously. It was just a simple movement, but everyone made some discoveries in the process of swinging the sword continuously. As their control of origin energy increased, they also discovered a sharp difference when swinging the sword. For example, how to use origin energy to produce a greater effect with the same amount of origin energy. Perhaps they didn't pay too much attention to this point on normal days. When releasing a martial skill, they paid more attention to the might of the martial skill. But now, they realized that controlling origin power was also a profound knowledge. The more origin energy they conserved, the longer their battle power, and if they could accurately control every bit of origin energy without wasting it, it meant that their battle power. Zhong Limu is right. In the process of cultivation, other than the improvement of sword qi, there are many other aspects that are quietly improving. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes fell on the figure on top of the waterfall. This time, they had seen how serious and terrifying Zhong Limu's cultivation was. Previously, they were often swept away by the river, but Zhong Limu was completely submerged by the river. Chapter 5699. Under the majestic waterfall, Zhong Limu's figure seemed extremely small. The huge waves crashed onto his body and directly pushed him to the bottom of the river. However, Zhong Limu was also very resilient and quickly made a comeback. Therefore, when everyone practiced swinging their swords, they could only watch as Zhong Limu continuously tried and failed. Defeated and defeated, defeated and still fighting. When Xiren was curious about how difficult Zhong Limu's move was, so he personally gave it a try. The result was undoubtedly heartbreaking. Before he could even take a few steps forward, he was already submerged by the waterfall. He had to drink a few mouthfuls of water before he could emerge. Di Beichun, Mo Yunjue, and Bali Yin Che also gave it a try. Their cultivation levels were slightly higher than Xiren's, but they only managed to take a few more steps forward. In front of the waterfall, they were extremely small. The difficulty level increased with every step forward. Based on their current situation, it was undoubtedly very far for them to reach Zhong Limu's current level. This gap is really too big. Xiren sighed. We still have a lot of training to do. After Mo Yunjue experienced this gap, the way he looked at Zhong Limu also changed. If Zhong Limu goes to the upper realm, I'm afraid no one will be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Di Beicha nodded and looked at the young man in the beast robe. Such a genius was really outstanding. I used to think that there were too many outstanding geniuses in the upper realm. But in front of Zhong Limu, those geniuses are all overshadowed. There are also many geniuses in the upper realm. Everyone is working hard to cultivate. While we've been here, I think Jun Lingxuan and Xiao So are also working hard to cultivate. Mo Yunjue's eyes darkened. Although he felt that Mu Jin's character was not very good, he could see that this guy was also tenacious when he was in the Immortal Cloud secret realm. This time, after being defeated by Hong Zhuang, the possibility of him giving up was not very high. Instead, it was more likely that he would work hard. Are we also working hard to cultivate? Di Baichun smiled faintly, but a cold light flashed in his eyes. The next time we meet, we'll see. In the blink of an eye, 2 months passed. Other than when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying, everyone else's strength stopped at Nebula Stage 9. According to Granny Hua, there was no need to rush to break through at this time. The most important thing was to accumulate. Among them, the first to sense the possibility of a breakthrough was by Li Yanche. Originally, his strength was slightly weaker than Ling, but now they were on par. Because of the existence of the seal, Ling found it even more difficult to break through. After Bai Li Yanche sensed the opportunity to break through, he had been suppressing it. He had no intention of breaking through. It will be interesting if we break through at the same time, Bai Li Yanche said with a smile. Let's take advantage of this opportunity. Wait for me and Yingying. Xiren's face was filled with joy. Normally, your breakthroughs are too fast. Yingying and I can't catch up to you. Now, this is a good opportunity. I don't think so. Di Baichun raised his eyebrows. Baichun, you'll get beaten up like this. Xiren threatened. With your strength? Forget I said that. Chapter 5700. Normally, everyone would spend most of their time cultivating on the surface of the river, and when it was time to eat, the men would go around hunting demonic beasts. After a while, they naturally became familiar with each other. On this day, when Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivating, Xiao Xuanzi suddenly looked ahead with excitement. Wow, it's so beautiful. The sudden voice attracted everyone's attention. Everyone turned their heads and looked in the direction Xiao Xuanzi was looking at. They didn't know what this guy was talking about. However, when they saw the figure in front of them, they were all stunned. An imperial wind horse elephant appeared in everyone's line of sight. Its rumbling sound revealed its weight. Its body was huge, but its lines were very beautiful. The imperial wind horse elephant is the descendant of a hippopotamus and an elephant. It's very good at speed and is a very powerful existence among the demonic beasts. Zhong Limu noticed Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' curious looks and immediately explained with a smile. This guy is very good at speed. Mo Yunjue was a little surprised. This guy in front of him was so huge, it didn't look like it was strong and healthy. Zhong Limu nodded slightly. You can't judge a book by its cover. It's the same for beasts. Little Blossom, you're here. Zhong Limu waved his hand at the imperial wind horse elephant. He was very familiar with it. The imperial wind horse elephant slowly walked to Zhong Limu's side and rubbed against him. It was very friendly. However, when it looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, it was undoubtedly a little more distant. Little Blossom? Shangwan Yingying's lips twitched. This imperial wind horse elephant looked so domineering. Why did it have such an unsuitable name? Without waiting for Zhong Limu's explanation, Xiao Xuanzi said with a silly smile, It's originally as beautiful as a flower. Everyone couldn't help but shiver. Looking at Xiao Xuanzi's love-struck expression, they suddenly felt that their aesthetic standards were a little different from Xiao Xuanzi's. Previously, I thought that Xiao Xuanzi's aesthetic standards were quite normal. Could it be that after he gained weight, his aesthetic standards also changed? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichun thoughtfully. Di Baichun's eyes were also filled with doubt. He shook his head and said, I don't know about that. Maybe the demonic beast's sense of beauty is different from ours. In my opinion, little Xuanzi must have been too empty and lonely recently, so he's thinking of love. Xiren's eyes lit up, and he looked like he had found the truth. Hearing Xiren's words, everyone looked at each other. Perhaps there was such a possibility. Zhong Limu, on the other hand, did not notice anything amiss as he explained to everyone, You all know that Granny Hua's name is Hua Hua, right? Back then, when Little Blossom was injured, it was Granny Hua who treated him. From then on, Little Flower and us got to know each other. Sometimes, when we found some treasures, we would give them to Granny Flower. However, Granny Hua did not accept it as a contract beast, but their relationship was still very good. Granny Hua's name is Hua Hua. So she named him Little Flower. Everyone finally understood. Actually, when they knew Granny Hua's name, They were also a little shocked. After all, this name was really too simple. Now, it seemed that Granny Hua had inherited her parents' tradition. Naming was as simple as always. Master, why do I feel that Granny Hua's naming skills are comparable to yours? Chapter 5701. Bailey Hongzhuang facepalmed. When she first heard the name Little Blossom, she fell helpless. However, after hearing Xiaohei's words, it seemed that her naming skills were on the same level as Grandma Flowers. At least mine is more suitable for your situation. Bailey Hongzhuang defended herself. Just take it as it is. Xiaohei spread her hands. She looked like she could say whatever she wanted. Little Blossom, they're my new friends. You haven't been here for a while, so you don't know them. They are now staying at Grandma Flower's house. You will see them often in the future. Let me introduce them to you. Zhong Limu introduced Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to Little Blossom. Only then did the vigilance in Little Blossom's eyes disappear. There was a hint of familiarity. However, facing Xiao Xuanzi's gaze, its gaze changed. Why is this guy looking at me so strangely? So pretty. Xiao Xuanzi looked at Little Blossom with infatuation. When Zhong Limu introduced himself, he took a step forward. Beautiful beast, I am Xiao Xuanzi. Little Blossom looked at Xiao Xuanzi strangely, but didn't say anything. Seeing this, Xiao Xuanzi went to Little Blossom's side. Little Blossom, your name is so nice. I just came to the abandoned immortal forest not long ago. They're all cultivating. It's so boring. Why don't you bring me around? Hose before brothers Di Beichan's side. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Looking at Xiao Xuanzi's flattering face, she said, Di Beichan, Xiao Xuanzi is quite good at chasing after beasts. Did he learn it from you? That's not it. Di Beichan shook his head. If you want to talk about spoiling your wife, he should have learned it from me. When I chased after you, Xiao Xuanzi wasn't even born yet. Tisk tsk. Shangwan Ing shrugged. That's too mushy. I can't take it anymore. Let's go cultivate first. I'm afraid Little Xuanzi is gifted in this aspect. When Xiren thought of Little Xuanzi's previous performance and made a judgment, Zhong Limu also noticed that Little Xuanzi was particularly interested in Little Flower. However, he felt that Little Xuanzi wouldn't have much of a chance because Little Flower's standards were very high. As expected, Little Blossom, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. I'm not free. It was just two simple words, but Xiao Xuanzi's flattering smile immediately froze. Zhong Limu, I'll be leaving first. After Little Flower said that, he turned and walked in another direction. When his huge body walked, there was a rumbling sound again. Xiao Xuanzi, I think you should just forget about it. Di Beichan muttered and was about to pull Xiao Xuanzi to cultivate together. However, when they turned around, everyone realized that Little Xuanzi had already disappeared. They could vaguely hear Xiao Xuanzi's voice. It's okay if you're not free. I'll go with you wherever you want to go. I'm free anyway. Everyone stood stiffly on the spot. They only saw Imperial Wind Horse Elephant quickly moving forward with a mystical fire demonic rock following closely beside it. The Imperial Wind Horse Elephant seemed to dislike the mystical fire demonic rock and increased its speed. However, the mystical fire demonic rock didn't seem to feel the other party's rejection and continued to follow closely. The Imperial Wind Horse Elephant is very good at speed, but the mystical fire demonic rock is also very good at speed. I wonder which one of them is faster? Mo Yunjue coldly said. Chapter 5702. Not long later, Xiao Xuanzi came back, but his face was bruised and swollen. Seeing this scene, everyone was not surprised. After all, this guy was so friendly and was so talkative, the Imperial Wind Horse Elephant must not be able to take it, so it directly beat him up. Xiao Xuanzi, that Imperial Wind Horse Elephant is bigger than you. I think you won't be able to control it. When Xiren looked at Xiao Xuanzi, who still had a nosebleed on his face, and comforted him. Di Beichan, who was practicing his sword, turned his head and helplessly shook his head. I think that Imperial Wind Horse Elephant is stronger than you. You better raise your cultivation first. Xiao Xuanzi's eyes lit up. Master, why did you say the same thing as Little Blossom? It said that I'm not strong enough. It doesn't like me like this. Then you should give up. Xiaobai rolled his eyes. Among them, Xiao Xuanzi was the one who didn't do his job the most. How can I do that? Xiao Xuanzi's face was serious. Didn't I say? Beating is affection and scolding is love. It beat and scolded me. I think you all know what it means. It said that I'm not strong enough. It must be because it hates iron for not becoming steel. Female beasts always care about their face. Wait until I'm stronger than her. She will accept me. Everyone who was originally sympathetic to Xiao Xuanzi did not want to say anything after hearing Xiao Xuanzi's words. This guy's face was thicker than a city wall. Although his face was injured, his heart was not hurt at all. Am I wrong? Xiao Xuanzi's face was filled with pride. Annoying. Too annoying. Everyone turned their heads. They might as well cultivate. Although everyone was not optimistic about Xiao Xuanzi and Little Blossom, what was worth being happy about was that Xiao Xuanzi was cultivating harder. The mystic fire demon rock was a high-level existence among the beasts. There was a bloodline left behind from ancient times in its body. Its cultivation talent was not weak at all. Once it cultivated with all its might, the results were not bad. Noticing this, everyone revealed a satisfied expression. Although Xiao Xuanzi's love came out of nowhere, it still had the effect of promoting. We've been here for a while. It's time to go back and take a look, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Back in the desert world and the ocean world, 3 days inside the desert world was equivalent to 1 day outside. Ever since they came to the abandoned immortal forest, time had returned to normal. Because this was the immortal region, a previously uninhabited world. Indeed. We also need to go back and buy some things. Deep Baicha nodded. The most important thing was to see his parents-in-law. They were all used to staying in the abandoned immortal forest, but they couldn't forget about their family. He didn't know if the Xiao family and the Jun family would make any moves in these 2 months. Are you guys going back? Zhong Limu couldn't help but ask when he heard the discussion between Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Deep Baicha nodded. Let's go back and take a look today. If everything is fine, we'll come back. All right. Zhong Limu replied with a smile. After making the decision, everyone returned to Granny Hua's residence. It was currently noon. Before they left, they had to complete their mission. When everyone returned, they found Granny Hua brewing medicine in the courtyard. After thinking for a while, everyone guessed that this was probably a medicinal bath prepared for them at night. Why are you back so early today? Chapter 5703. Granny Hua, we were planning to go back today, so we came back first. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was bright and beautiful. After getting along for 2 months, she really liked this kind and lovely old man. Hearing this, Granny Hua was not surprised. She nodded calmly and smiled. Looks like these old fellows are going to complain while you're gone. Everyone smiled. Now that the seniors' food was spoiled by them, if they were to eat the usual food, they would probably think that it tasted bad. Granny, if there's nothing else, we'll be back soon. Granny Hua stopped what she was doing. I was preparing the medicinal bath for you tonight, but since you're going back today, I'll pass this medicine to you. Everyone was surprised. They had asked about it before, but Granny Hua had never told them. You've consumed a lot of energy during your daily cultivation, so the medicinal bath will be very helpful for your bodies. If you're fine after you go back, continue to soak and don't fall behind. Everyone could not help but feel touched. Thank you, Granny Hua. Granny Hua smiled and waved her hand. You little fellows are really polite. You've been thanking me all day, and you'll learn from Mu-er in the future. Mu-er won't thank you. Zhong Limu did not think that he would be pulled out of nowhere, and immediately felt embarrassed. Grandfather said that we're already very familiar with each other, so there's no need for such formalities. That's right. Granny Hua nodded. There's no need for formalities between familiar people. Everyone smiled, knowing that Granny Hua treated them as one of her own. I didn't know that you were going to leave, so I didn't prepare more medicine. Granny Hua turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. I see that you've been wanting to learn for a long time, so I'll pass this prescription to you today. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but be stunned. Then, her face was filled with joy. Previously, when she had felt the effects of this medicinal bath, she had hoped to be able to master it. This was because the benefits it provided to cultivators were too great. Expelling the impurities in the body was extremely important to any cultivator, but it was very difficult to do so. She always thought that if she could learn it, she would be able to let her family take a medicinal bath as well. Unfortunately, she didn't know enough about many of the medicinal herbs in the immortal domain. So even if she studied the medicinal herbs in this medicinal bath every day, there were still some aspects that she couldn't determine. She had also tested Granny Hua before, but Granny Hua had never told her. She did not expect Granny Hua to be willing to teach her today. Most importantly, it turned out that Granny Hua had already seen through her thoughts. Before she could say a word of thanks, Bailey Hongzhuang swallowed it back. She then smiled brightly and said, "Granny Hua, you're so nice." Granny Hua smiled and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a satisfied expression. "That's more like it. I see that you seem to be very interested in medicine. If you want to learn, I can teach you when I have time in the future." Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up, and her pretty face became even more dazzling due to her excitement. The corners of her lips kept rising, and it seemed like she was about to lose control. "If Granny is willing to teach, I'll definitely learn it well." Granny Hua chuckled and handed the medicine she had prepared to Bailey Hongzhuang. Then, she wrote another prescription. Chapter 5704. "There's still some medicinal ingredients here. You can bring them back." Granny Hua pointed to the medicinal ingredients not far away. "These were originally prepared for you guys." Looking in the direction that Granny Hua was pointing at, everyone realized that the medicinal ingredients that Granny Hua had been drying these past few days were all prepared for them. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was proficient in medicinal ingredients, understood that although Granny Hua had been drying medicinal ingredients previously, there weren't so many of them. Later on, these were all prepared for them. Thinking about it, after they went to cultivate, Granny Hua hadn't been idle and had gone to pick medicinal ingredients. Although the abandoned immortal forest was rich in medicinal ingredients, they consumed quite a lot of them every day, so Granny Hua had probably spent a lot of time. For a moment, everyone was moved. Compared to what Granny Hua had done for them, their daily lives were nothing. Before leaving, Granny Hua took out a few medical books and handed them to Bailey Hongzhuang. "If you have time, take a look at these medical books. There are many types of medicinal ingredients in them. Only by understanding the types of medicinal ingredients will you be able to learn faster from me in the future." Looking at the heavy medical books in her hands, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded seriously. "Granny, I will definitely remember the contents of these books. Since you're so serious, I believe you." Granny Hua's eyes were filled with admiration. "It's been a long time since I've seen such lovable children. Go back and come back when you're free. This sword move isn't finished yet." Everyone nodded. After practicing for 2 months, although everyone had made quite a bit of progress compared to when they had just arrived, they were still far from reaching Zhongli Mu's level. "Hongzhuang, your dream has come true. Granny Hua is willing to teach you." Shangguan Ying had a smile on her face. She knew that Hongzhuang had this thought, but she didn't say it out loud. "That's right," Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. "Granny Hua isn't only skilled in medicine, she's also skilled in alchemy. Previously, President Liu told me that a grade 10 alchemist is much stronger than a grade 9 alchemist. Previously, I didn't know the difference between a grade 10 alchemist and a grade 10 alchemist, but I'm certain that Granny Hua is an existence that surpasses a grade 10 alchemist." Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with certainty. Even though she had never truly seen Granny Hua concoct dawn, she could feel the strength of Granny Hua's foundation just by looking at her occasionally. An alchemist who surpasses the 10th grade? Xiren couldn't help but be surprised. He's actually that powerful? Not only Granny Hua, but the other seniors are also very powerful existences. Di Beichen's face turned serious. Even such a peerless expert lives in the abandoned immortal forest. I wonder how terrifying the immortal domain is. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but fall silent. The current situation in the sky had already made them deeply aware of how terrifying the immortal domain was. The difference in strength between the upper realm and the immortal domain was truly shocking. Back then, even by Yunjiao and Shunjun couldn't escape this calamity. Let's not think about this for now. In any case, we still have time. Bailey Hongzhuang's laughter broke the heavy atmosphere. Don't all experts cultivate? Who knows? When the time comes, we might also become experts in the immortal domain. That's right. I have confidence in us. Shang Guanying raised her arms high with a face full of confidence. After coming out of the primordial chaos ring, everyone opened the room. Chapter 5705. If you come out, we have something to talk about. When they saw the note on the door, everyone looked at each other and immediately walked out. Di Beichun, Hongzhuang, you guys go and see what's going on. We'll wait here for your news. Mo Yunjue said in a deep voice. Okay, then we'll go first. Di Beichun nodded. He didn't say anything else and quickly rushed out with Bailey Hongzhuang. They didn't know when this note was written, and they didn't know if it was too late. Logically speaking, everything has been very calm for a while. There shouldn't be any problems. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned and kept thinking, could it be that the Xiao family and the Jun family did something again? I don't know. Di Beichun shook his head. The Xiao family and the Jun family don't dare to confront us directly. If they called us here, then it should be about Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou. The two immediately rushed to the patriarch's residence and met Di Xiaofeng on the way. Seeing the two appear, Di Xiaofeng let out a sigh of relief. You two finally appeared. Big brother, what happened? Actually, it's not a big deal. It's just that the Xiao family and the Jun family have some movements recently. Father wants to inform you in advance. Also, there's an opportunity to gain experience. Father wants us to go together. After hearing this news, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun let out a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't a very serious matter, then they could think of a way to deal with it. Father happens to be in the study. You guys can go directly. Okay. When Di Yujue saw Di Beichun and Mo Yunjue, a comfortable smile appeared on his face. You're out? Di Beichun smiled and nodded. You can say so. Di Yujue carefully sized up the two of them, and a wisp of surprise quietly flashed across his brows. He has already broken through to Nebulous Stage 9. It seems that the results of this period of seclusion are not bad. Father, we've always been working hard on our cultivation. We don't dare to slack off at all. Di Beichun was all smiles. Although they had been practicing their swordsmanship for a while, their cultivation was also steadily improving. This speed was even faster than when he cultivated all day. It was precisely because he had exhausted all his origin power that his cultivation speed was even faster. Zhong Limu had been using this method to cultivate since he was young. It was hard for him not to improve his strength. I can see that. Di Yujue nodded. His handsome face had one word written on it, satisfaction. Father, I heard from Big Brother that the Jun family and the Xiao family seem to have made some moves. Di Beichun returned to the main topic. He was still very concerned about this point. Di Yujue's expression also became more serious as he said, Indeed, this is the news I heard a few days ago. I heard that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Shou found a new master and are now learning from that master. It can be said that they are improving at lightning speed. New master? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Which powerful senior is it? This person is called Shuyu. He is a famous expert in the upper realm. Usually, there are many cultivators who want to learn from him, but he has never taken in any disciples. I don't know why he took in Xiao Shou and Jun Lingxuan as his disciples this time. Di Yujue's face darkened. When he heard this news, his heart sank. This wasn't good news at all. Chapter 5706. If it was someone else, I wouldn't have to worry. However, Shuyu is different. Shuyu is a publicly recognized expert. I heard that there is a higher realm beyond the upper realm. However, that person was very vague about it. Even if I wanted to know more about it, I didn't have the chance to. This Shuyu had once been to that higher world. Di Yujue's face darkened. He looked at the sky outside the house. I want to see that person before. His cultivation and knowledge are far beyond ordinary cultivators. However, he rejected Xiao Feng as his disciple. All these years, he hasn't accepted any disciples. I thought that he had given up on the idea. I didn't expect them to take the initiative. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. They were surprised. They wanted to ask Di Yujue about this. However, they didn't expect Di Yujue to bring up first. If they guessed correctly, the higher realm should be the crossing immortal domain. However, they didn't know how Shuyu came back after going to the crossing immortal domain. Father, is the place you're talking about the crossing immortal domain? Di Baichen asked. You know about the crossing immortal domain? Di Yujue was surprised. He asked in confusion, how do you know about the crossing immortal domain? Even he had only heard about this place once. He didn't know about the situation there. He didn't expect Di Baichen to know about this place. It was too shocking. I heard about it from the owner of the historical remains. Di Baichen made up a story. He wanted to tell Di Yujue about the Chaos Ring. However, after they brought Mo Yunjue to the abandoned immortal forest, Senior Zhong Li told them not to tell anyone about this secret. Although they didn't know why Senior Zhong Li told them that it wasn't good for them to keep bringing people in. After all, the seniors had only accepted the appearance of the few of them. Otherwise, if they had brought in all the familiar faces, the seniors would probably have ignored them. Granny Hua already spent a lot of time preparing the medicinal baths for them every day. It was impossible for them to teach everyone. As such, they could only do so. I see. Listening to Di Baichen's words, Di Yujue did not doubt him. Di Baichen's darkness attribute talent was so outstanding. He knew that the owner of the ruins was definitely not a simple person. It was not strange that he knew about the existence of the crossing immortal domain. Then what did that senior say? Di Baichen pondered and shook his head. Senior didn't mention too much about it. I only heard that the crossing immortal domain is the place where cultivators from the upper realm ascend. However, the crossing immortal domain is only a place for transitional immortals. If you want to truly become an immortal, you have to enter the immortal domain. There is an immortal domain above the crossing immortal domain. Di Yujue was stunned. Obviously, he didn't expect there to be two places that were even higher. Apart from the shock on his face, there was also a trace of complexity. Seems like I'm truly ignorant and inexperienced. I've actually never heard of this immortal realms before. Father, the Shangxian continent is so big. It's normal that there are many places that we don't know about. Chapter 5707. This Shu Yu should have gone to the crossing immortal domain. As for how he came back, I don't know. Di Yujue sighed. That place is an existence of a higher level. For him to be able to go there, it shows that his cultivation has surpassed most of the people in the upper realm. At least, my strength is not as good as his. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen seemed to have suddenly understood why Di Yujue was so worried. Since Di Yujue was not Shu Yu's opponent, there was probably no one in the family who could be his opponent. If Shu Yu stood on the side of the Di family and Xiao family, or even helped them to deal with the Di family, things would become much more troublesome. Such a big family seemed to have a deep foundation, but for a true expert, it was not difficult to deal with them. To catch bandits, one must first catch the leader. As long as the backbone was taken care of, the rest would just be a plate of loose sand. The two of them also felt the threat. If that was really the case, they would have to think of a way. Father, when the boat reaches the bridge head, everything will be fine. Although I don't know why Shu Yu is willing to help them, things may not necessarily turn for the better. Di Baichen consoled, but deep in his eyes, there was a serious and worried look. To him, the Di family was worth protecting with his life. According to what I know, the crossing immortal domain is also a place that the immortal domain looks down on. Only those who perform well in the crossing immortal domain can go to the immortal domain. If this Shu Yu really had the strength, he would not still be in the upper realm. Father, don't worry too much. I believe that the upper realm does not have only one true expert. There will always be a way. Bailey Hongzhuang also consoled. The tall and sturdy man in front of them carried the entire family on his shoulders so that they could have a stable environment. Thinking about it, ever since Shu Yu took Jun Lingxuan and Di Yujue as his disciples, Di Yujue had not been able to eat or sleep in peace. Oh, there is actually such a thing? Di Yujue was a little surprised. He felt as if he had seen a wider world, one that was completely beyond his imagination. Di Baichen nodded. Father, there's no point in thinking about this now. The most important thing is that we have to raise our cultivation as soon as possible. Who knows, Maybe we can go to the immortal domain together in the future. You little brat, you really dare to dream. Yujue chuckled, but the haze between his eyebrows was blown away by Baichen's words. However, what you said makes sense. Who said that we can't go? The atmosphere in the room became relaxed. Yujue spoke again. This time, other than telling you this, I have another thing to tell you. An ancient battlefield had suddenly appeared in the desert near Shihan City in the northwest. Currently, it was covered by a dense fog. Although some people had already entered, they still couldn't see the situation clearly. The only thing that could be confirmed is that there are many treasures left behind from ancient times. Therefore, all the major forces have decided to send the younger generation to explore. Yujue's gaze swept across Baichun and Yujue's faces. He said in a deep voice, there are definitely many treasures in the ancient battlefield. However, the danger is also very high. This time, both you and Xiaofeng will be going. In addition, some outstanding cultivators from the family will also be going. Last time, in the Immortal Cloud Mystery Realm, your performance was very good and made our family the biggest beneficiary.